Hello, everybody. Welcome to our review of Burning Wheel. I am still using the overlays from the game we just finished 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
In the first 2 hours of this 4-hour call, and now for the next while, we're still going to try and make this pretty short. We're going to be reviewing what our thoughts are on Burning. Yeah. I don't know if we necessarily need to introduce ourselves as people because we're not characters.
We can. I don't know.
Let's introduce who was GM and who was players because that's different than normal.
Right. So yeah, I'm Zen. I was the GM of the first campaign, the longer of the two. Should I introduce the campaign itself at this point?
Yeah.
So yeah, we played a game about a bunch of mercenaries who were contracted on the bad side of the war to help expand the borders of an evil empire called the Unbroken Dynasty. And it was after the war, just holding the front line kind of thing with some intrigue and a lot of infighting between the players.
I think that's an understatement.
That was it. The whole game was
yeah, pretty much the entire game devolved into like the players screwing each other over. I there was a point in time where I was just like, all right, I have nothing else to add to this game. You guys are just making your own obstacles, so have fun.
That's what happened. It was amazing.
we were our own bad guys.
We were the baddies.
Yeah. So the game itself was about the fate of a small yet important mining town now occupied by a conquering necromantic empire after a war. Most of us played as mercenaries working for that empire. There's lots of, we just mentioned, drama, intrigue, and player versus player conflict. Zen was the GM. The rest of us were players. After that, we just finished another game. That was 9 sessions, by the way. It lasted 9 sessions, so really quick.
The other game was 1.5 sessions. Basically, 1 session of playing and like one session of half a session of like a session 0. But it was a different. The point was to do tonally different and to explore different parts of the world from the first one. So everyone was young Rodin, which are the rat people in Burning Wheel, and then they had to do a coming-of-age adventure. We didn't care about NPCs a lot. We didn't care about high-level magic bullshit. No, it was do the adventure, explore, care about rations, care about finding your way, exploration stuff. So it used very different skills. The other game, like, if you didn't have social skills and you didn't have good fighting skills, you are a bad character, basically. But in this one, it was the opposite, where it was more about having practical skills to get yourself through the world. So foraging was good. We paid attention to rations. We paid attention to like sleeping and things like that. Stuff that was only background in the other game was the focus of it. So it's cool that we got to do both.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. I think we're gonna have thoughts on both campaigns because one was for effectively 1 session, one was 9 sessions. Most of our thoughts will be about the first game. I played a character. Well, actually, let's introduce our characters by most typical to least typical. So, Indigo, your first character.
Yeah, my first character in the mercenary game was a mercenary. They were a fighter. That was really their whole shtick. They had a big spear, and they had some gray shaded stats that made them easy to push around. And they're very much about like doing mercenary stuff at the core. Like they believed in like the mercenary company. They believed in like the rules and regulations that this is the right way to do things and stuff like that.
Yep.
A little bit petulant, a little bit violent, but more or less like mercenary.
Right. Grim, or Marissa, who did you play as?
Hello, I'm Marissa. I played as Krim, as has just been said. So Krim's story kind of followed her attempt to get over the loss of her last company through a couple of different methods. First off, just drinking away the memories, which didn't work out too
No.
well. So then she decided that she'd do something useful and use her skills to command the company, and that didn't go over too well either. So then she decided that she'd try revenge and try and kill off the person who killed the last company. And that actually sort of did work because
Yeah,
she
that
did end
temporarily.
up
It
killing.
worked and backfired at the same time.
Band-Aid
She-
solution.
She killed a major person in the evil empire, and that kind of
Stalled.
spiraled the
Stalled
rest
is major person.
of her story just a little bit as she ran around then trying to not be in custody, not be killed, and still trying to uphold those morals that she did have in this world of shifting alliances and who do I need to be with to stay alive and to keep as many other people as I can alive with me.
Yep. Who was Gale?
I am Jordan, and I played Gale, and Gale was sort of like medieval Jedi, basically, like Jedi who every one of his order died. He's like, I gotta be a mercenary now, I guess. So I think as our little cheat sheet suggests, he's probably the most in the middle person. While he wasn't super like gun ho about like we gotta do our job for the Empire, and he also wasn't like entirely like screw the Empire, right? He was sort of like I gotta do what I gotta do to stay alive. Magically gifted, a lot of fire, summoned axes, force push, the works. My also knowing that I cannot do a Scottish accent to save my life.
Takes practice. It took me some practice to do. Now
Very hard.
Yeah. My name is Spencer, or Primarch. I played Sarian, who is not a mercenary, but he was very involved. He was an Empire spy sent to root out rebels. His father happened to die, so that's a legit reason, but also an excuse where people wouldn't be suspicious of him. He started off being very power hungry and very like, I want to get more influence and rise up the ranks, and I'm schemes and intrigue to do it. And by the end of the game, he was like, this whole thing's falling apart by itself. I just need help. I'm just telling it straight as is, and I need to just send light the fires of Gondor. Tell Rohan that Gondor needs assistance because things are bad enough without my schemes. Oh boy.
Light the fires of Mordor.
Yep.
Yes.
And then I played a cartoon necromancer named Lord
Yes.
Skull.
So you play two characters because
Yes.
one character I may have stabbed significantly a bit.
Yeah,
once or
stabbing
twice.
happened. So instead of waiting for the other character to get out of the hospital, I played Skull, who was a cartoon necromancer. He had
And-
a gang of thugs called the Bone Brigade.
It was great. And then Lord Skull was killed in a fight. Not by
Then
me
I was
this
killed
time.
in the fight.
And then he went
I
back to
got my
time.
head cut off in one swing. It was bad.
Yep.
And then we went back to time.
Yep.
Yep.
Gale famous for subsystem destroying.
Yep. All right. So that's who we played as. It was a lot of fun.
I only got to summon 2 zombies. It was a total hack. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand why we even played this game. I only got to summon 2 zombies.
I know.
I mean, you
But-
could have summoned more.
Burning Wheel is a complicated game. We're gonna
Yeah,
try and
it
get
should
through every
always
piece
be
of it.
focused to maximizing zombies.
I thought you were okay. So we're gonna try and get through each piece of it. Parts that we don't have a lot to say about, we'll just speed through. We're gonna start off in character creation, and talk about various parts of that and on mechanics and characters. We'll talk about skill tests. We'll talk about advancement. Beliefs, instincts, and traits are obviously very important. So that'll be right after that, leading into Artha. Then some of the subsystems like steel, magic, duel of wits, combat, armor, injury, and recoveries. Most of those we'll probably say a few sentences about, but there's a lot to talk about, and we want to make this not 4 hours. Because a few years ago we reviewed Burning Wheel, and it was a 4-hour review. We want to avoid that this time.
That's a little much.
Yeah. So we'll let's keep going, I think. So
Yeah.
How is character creation for everyone? Character creation is, in my opinion, the most complicated part of playing the game.
Oh, it's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So
I like
in
it.
Burning Wheel, just to define this for people that don't know, there are we'll focus on humans managed setting. There are several settings within the human race that you can basically build your character on depending on your concept. And it does things like you can take you build life paths on top of each other. So your character was a farmer for a little while, but then they started milling their own flour and now they're a miller. And each of these life paths give you access to certain skills and certain traits that help inform what kind of character you are.
And the life paths don't freely flow between each other. Only certain life paths can go to other ones. So if you want to be the big gallant knight, you have to be rich. You have to train as a page. You have to train as a squire, and then you can become a knight. You can't just go, well, first I was a farmer, then I was a wizard, then I was a knight, and now I'm playing the game as a fighter, wizard, thief. It doesn't work like that in this game. They all have to connect. Like
It's more realistic.
yeah, realistic's a strong word because you can still throw fireballs and you could be a rat person, but it's more grounded.
It is more simulatious. It is more grounded.
More grounded.
It is the life path system makes the game inherently tied to its setting. And it doesn't have a specific setting, but it has a specific genre, which is grounded medieval fantasy. That is very difficult to get away from in this game. You would need to hack it to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is not an easy task in and of itself.
No, it's everything will affect everything else.
The one thing that I found with Lifepaths, occasionally when we were going from the second game, most often, a lot of the times it would give, here's the name of the life path. It's night. Here's the different things that it gives. And that was fine when it was something simple like night. But when it was something slightly more referential, maybe, or a joke name or something like that, it could be sometimes difficult to try and figure out what sort of a life path is Pinky? What sort of a life path do they mean by bushwhacker? Something that has multiple different definitions there.
Yep.
So I'd love just a short little description of.
I think that's part of the fun is like building, because this is not a mass market game. It's still an independently published product. Like that stuff's super fun to include in stuff like this, where this is a game that I'm making and I'm sharing it with you. Like those kind of touches let me know their influences and let me know what weird, dumb historical garbage they're into, because I think the only reason I know there's a specific word for making crossbows is because of Burning Wheel.
Wait, what is the word? I assume it's not Fletcher. That's what we're making. It's what?
Atiliator.
Yes. Yeah, and a person that makes crossbows is an atiliator.
It's the only reason I know that word is because I saw it in Burning Wheel and then I had to go look it up because I had no idea what it was.
And things like that are kind of awesome. I just possibly like little descriptions.
Yes.
And you will find that there's more of that gray area outside of the human life paths. The human ones are usually good. Pretty straightforward. But you get into your rodent and orc life paths and you're like, what exactly is that?
Yeah.
They're all jokes.
So yeah, you choose like segments basically of your character's life, their backstory, so to speak, is how their stats work and everything like that. And you get a number of skill points. You get a number of like starting money, basically.
Yeah, you get related skills and related traits to describe your character to your life path. So farmers get like farming stuff and knights get knight stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
But some of them, the first one listed on each one is a forced purchase. It will give you the points to purchase it, but the first skill and the first trait listed on every life path is something you must start with.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of that?
I mean, I think it reinforces the life path itself, because usually the first skill is what the life path is. Like woodcutter
first
has
skill is
fire
the most
building
important
as the first skill.
Yeah.
Hunter has
hunting. You cannot be a woodcutter if you can't cut wood.
Yeah.
Like it adds to that grounded feeling of if you were a woodcutter, you're gonna know how to do that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's weird if you go, I'm a woodcutter, and then like let's say you're in 5e, like I don't have survival. I don't know how to really do that, right?
But you were a ranger. Yeah, but I forgot.
I didn't take survival. I took investigation, right?
Yeah.
Like, it sort of reinforces this, like, you're no matter what, your character is going through their life and they are learning these skills.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they had
whether
to
they
actually be part of that and do it as a profession.
Yeah.
I
It's
like that with
impossible to be a
skills,
faker and not fake.
and I don't like that with traits. Especially the
Yes.
more life paths you have, the more likely it is that, well, you might not have forgotten the skills you learned, but you might not be the same person you were. Like, especially I felt that with my character, because they were a doctor turned spy. Those are very different things. And some of the traits that I was forced to take never came up.
And I had that problem with the second thing, where it was trying to inform my personality. Like, the first time I ran through it and I did it wrong, I had the personality trait greedy, and I was forced to take it. And I'm like, but that's not how I want to play the character. So I ended up just ignoring it, and it didn't cause a problem, but it also felt like that's a wasted point where I could have put that into something that might have actually informed play.
And I think I like the forced skill point. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But I don't like the forced trait purchase.
I like the forced trait purchase mostly because you can't do it at Burning Wheel, and that eats away at a certain point in my heart. But I love rolling for my characters, where I roll every single option that's rollable. It's not possible at Burning Wheel, so it's not that
Could you
big of a
find a
deal.
way? You could probably find a way.
No,
like,
no, you
list
couldn't.
every
I'm not
every
going
life
to.
path, list every
Yeah.
born and roll, list every life path that born leads into and roll. Like, it would be a lot of work.
It would be so
You
much
could
work.
do it.
I'm not going to put the work in.
Yeah,
It will not make a fun or intriguing Burning Wheel character, in my opinion.
that is true. That's true.
But
Yeah.
But I like the forced trait purchasing because it gives me that feel of rolling for my character of, well, yeah, I could always go in. I never go in. I don't make characters with concepts ahead of time. I just kind of pick options and then figure out from the end. So I like the trait thing that way.
Because it informs you about the character.
It informs my choices because I cannot picture a character in my head until I have pieces to look at.
That's fair.
I don't do outline and then fill it in. I fill it in and then I decide the outline.
Okay.
Yeah, and the same point stands for the traits. Like a lot of them are direct results of living the life you'd have to lead in order to do the thing that you are. Like, for example, a coal man, someone that like gathers coal and sells it, has a hacking cough because he's constantly around that dust and stuff. Like,
yeah, but I still, many of the, like, for example, abused is one that I took from my rodent character. They only had 3 life paths. If they had 5 life paths and their abused trait was no longer applicable with my character concept, I just needed to take that life path to do anything martial, I would have preferred, and it made sense for my character, but I, in many other ways, would have preferred not to take that. That's one of them.
yeah, that is a fair point.
Yeah, I think there are more cases where the trait sort of helps inform the character, like with the hacking cough.
But does it help without being forced? Because it's still listed there.
Right. I think even if you do take it, you don't have to portray the character that way. That's why, I mean, I don't want to skip ahead, but that's where trait vote comes in, right?
Yeah,
Because
I feel like it's a matter of opinion. It's not like a positive or a negative. It's a personal opinion whether or not you like informing from the choices or if you like picking choices to inform your concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, victim was actually the name of the trait I meant.
Yeah.
Just double checking.
Yeah. So shades? I don't know. I feel like
Shades. So in Burning Wheel, the roll system is you roll a number of dice, usually equal to your skill, with help and with some calculations. Number of d6s, the number that are equal to or higher than normally 4 is the number of successes. You need to get a number of successes to win. It's not unlike, I think, Shadowrun.
It's explicitly based on it's the Shadowrun system. Shades are not in Shadowrun, but this dice system is
the dice
very
system
heavily
is Shadowrun.
It's Shadowrun based. Like, it's evolved a
Yeah.
lot.
D6,
It's very
dice pool, exploding sixes, that kind of thing.
yeah, exploding sixes, dice pool, needing to get number of dice greater than 3, that kind of
There's a
stuff
lot of
is all Shadowrun.
terminology around shades that's weird. So the way shades work is if you normally all skill start as black shade, you need 4 or higher to get a success. You can increase it to gray shade, 3 or higher, which is meant to be like the peak of human ability, and a white shade, 2 or higher, which means you only fail on a 1 on a d6, which is very powerful. But that's like explicitly supernaturally powerful or supernaturally skilled at something. There's a lot of terminology around shades, but the way it works is interesting because during character creation, you can spend 5 skill points or 5 stat points to increase a stat or a skill to a shade. And so you'll start off with lower skills or stats, but because shading is extremely difficult and time-consuming during the game, it's basically the only way to guarantee you get it at all. And your potential for success is much higher. You can still only with 2 white get a maximum of 2 successes, so it's still not good. But it's like you're buying consistency in a way.
Yeah, because I for Gale gray shaded sorcery, and I did that as like he's sort of like a prodigy, right?
Yeah.
So, like I like gray shading a skill is sort of like if you have a natural ability to something that would make sense. And then I guess you could do the same thing with stats. Like if you have a natural ability, like you are just a powerful person, but then that makes the stat lower overall.
Yeah. I found that especially interesting with time because your gray shaded will, you had a very low will, but if time stayed in the game and used it more, they would have become the most willful character in the game.
Oh yeah, no, the whole point of me gray shading the will like that was I wanted to rapid fire pick up wises. That was the pro strat there. Was I was kind of
Wait,
the
but
goal
wises
was to...
are based in perception. Am I mixing it up? Did you have gray perception?
It was perception that was gray shaded.
Yeah, I had gray shaded perception.
You just had low will as well.
Yeah, I also as a result of
spending mental stat points.
Yes, as a result of spending all of my points to gray shade my perception, my will was also garbage. But the goal was to rapid fire pick up wises with such a low perception that I could use them to just add to everything. But I didn't get that far.
And that's the thing. It's I think that shades are really interesting during character creation. I intentionally chose not to gray shade because I didn't think Saren was someone who had any like prodigy-esque abilities. He was driven, he had that trait even. But he was not a prodigy in anything, and so he was still just as good as and just as valid as the other characters. He wasn't worse. He was in certain ways stronger, and in very niche ways worse because that's how shades work. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and just so it's said, people beginning the game. Just skip right past shading.
Yes,
it's not a recommended way to play. We did because we wanted to see what would happen,
and we like fun.
Wow.
At creation, it was an interesting way to increase strength. I found it much more interesting later in the game, which I think we'll get to later.
We will.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that we want to talk about as part of character creation were resource points, also known as RPs. During character creation, your life path pays you, and your life path pays you a setting appropriate amount. If you are weaving baskets as a life path, that will pay you a weaving basket's wage. If you are a king, that will pay you a king's wage in resource points. And then you spend those resource points on most material things and also some immaterial things. Reputations, relationships with people, things like that. And
well, it just represents the money needing to be spent to get to that point. So time you're not spent working, you still have to spend money to exist while you train your gang of thugs.
Yeah.
Like that's what the...
But it's interesting that close NPC relationships are bought at character creation with the same system that buys you a house, and that buys you a sword, and that buys you a reputation.
because they're all just as useful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this game,
And-
they are.
And currency is abstracted in Burning Wheel to the point that it also includes barter and favors and your
Mhm.
reputation.
Yep.
Um,
So that was
So-
also interesting, and because of that, characters can start off with very different resource amounts from each other. But
Yes.
Burning Wheel, despite the historical fantasy setting, is not in any way D&D. Like,
No.
it
Nope.
is
these books care nothing about balance.
no.
Nothing at all.
Balance is for suckers.
Not only that, I think balance would detract from the game. It would
Oh,
actually
it would be
act-
so much worse.
it would
if
be
everyone
way
was
more
good.
boring if everyone was on equal footing, in my opinion.
Part of Here, you go first.
I don't know. Just the best part is that, like, yeah, we could all try everything, but also I suck so much at this. Like, you look at the system and you know there is 0 chance of my character achieving this.
Yes.
There's
And I think
nothing I could possibly do to get to this point, and the player at the table next to you can just do it like it's nothing. Because that's how much it matters that you train for something or you put effort into it, or in D&D, or it's like, oh, I'll get that to the next level up.
Yeah, it's part of the grounding of the game where, yeah, of course, if you've spent your whole life being a soldier, you're going to be good at soldier things. But if you spent your whole life being a politician, you're going to be good at politicking and like stuff like that. So
yes.
it's
And a
not like in
soldier
D&D.
Parliament sucks.
Yeah, and it's not like in D&D where you could go, okay, I don't know, I want to roll for I don't know, like survival. Can I build a hut? And you're like, you grew up in the city, home dog. Like,
Yeah.
okay, roll. Oh, you're
There's not a lot
Yeah,
of, like,
there's
I
just
can't
a-
remember the
yeah.
term, but like career fluidity or whatever it is. Like, there's not a lot of easy transitions over to different career paths.
Which is
No.
historically accurate.
Which is historically accurate.
They
That's
did
true.
tend to lock you in real early on back then.
Yep. But I think that's a good segue
Yep.
into what we want to talk about next. There's skill tests. In my opinion, in addition to beliefs, instincts, and traits, the core of the game
yeah.
are skill
Oh, yeah.
tests. So, as I mentioned before,
So-
Shadowrun system, roll dice, get successes.
So-
Count successes.
Yes.
Because of what we were just talking about and how specific the different skills are, it was also occasionally a bit awkward trying to pair, okay, I want to do this. What skill matches it? Oh, my character was not built for that. So
Yes.
in some ways limited you a little bit there, but again, it was limiting because of that grounding. So it was kind of fair.
It's simultaneously
Yeah.
limited and flexible because in Burning Wheel, they use the term intent and task. What you aim to do and what goal you want to accomplish does not necessarily mean you have to roll the skill associated with the goal, just how you are getting to it. The one in the book, I believe, is about impressing a king with your sword skill by winning a duel that is presented to him as a show. We had, I think, a few that came up like that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
were
so
just-
the basis of every roll in Burning Wheel is the player defines their intent, what they want to happen if they're successful with the roll. And then we look at the character sheets and the situation in general and determine the task needed to accomplish that goal. So we'll look at your skills and everything else, and whatever one applies the best in how you describe yourself doing this thing is how you roll.
Mhm.
um,
Unless you take sorcery and then you just break it all.
unless you take sorcery, which is completely broken and super powerful. As is meant to be, I'm pretty sure. That's intentional.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was gonna say I've never thought that a game where reading and writing are separate would be so fun because they are separate. Like you can know how to read and not know how to write. And
It's
you
the
can know
best separation
know how
of
to
skills
read.
ever. Like, it's so minute detail between...
Yeah.
Because that also means you could have the reading skill and the calligraphy skill
and
which
not
is-
know how to write.
and not know how to write.
Yeah, calligraphy if you have calligraphy without writing, I would imagine you're just drawing. You're not.
No, you're writing
Yeah.
the words. Calligraphy without write is writing the words, because write refers to assembling words into
Oh, I see. So
into
you
a
can't.
narrative.
What you don't know
So
is
you
like
can-
sentence structure or things like that.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
still write words like food and help or hurt or whatever on a piece of paper with calligraphy.
But
just
if you
can't-
write a letter, it will barely be legible.
Yeah, it'll just be a string of words with no grammar or sentence structure.
Yeah.
It's always weird though because okay, I've written a thing, but I have which I can't write, but I have the read skill. But apparently, I'm not able to figure out that I wrote that wrong. Yeah, it was a weird.
It might be that you know it's wrong, but you don't know how to fix it or something like that.
It's more of that kind of thing. You know it doesn't seem right, but it's also not like you have the skills to assemble it correctly.
Yeah, you're like, I hope they'll figure it out. Yeah, and then another very interesting about Burning Wheel is failure, because failure is both common and interesting, is how it's always meant to
it's designed to be most rolls fail.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like the odds are skewed against you on 99% of rolls on Burning Wheel. And it's because...
Go ahead.
My point is, like, that's what I don't know where it is on this, but fate, like, ties into that everything's designed to fail system.
Yep.
But yeah, that was something that I actually loved about this game, because when you're playing D&D, you don't want to fail. You want to be able to go and hit the thing or do whatever you were trying to do. In this game, trying and failing was probably one of the most fun things that could happen, because a failure and a consequence always made things more interesting.
Yeah. So during a failure, oftentimes, and Zen, I think you actually would know from GMing it longest, during a failure, usually you don't do what you want to do. That can sometimes happen if it's interesting, but it's rare that it happens. Oftentimes it's you do, but there's a twist or a cost, or it doesn't work out the way you thought it was, or you try to do this task to accomplish this goal, and you did the task, but the goal doesn't work out. Failures in Burning Wheel do not make from a good GM, do not make characters incompetent, because they are not incompetent. And I think a lot of that, if there was one thing as a GM I would want every GM of Burning Wheel to know, it is that. This is not like certain editions of D&D where if you fail, you like drop your weapon or other. It feels more like something out of the Three Stooges with enough combat rolls. This is not that. This is your characters are competent. Failure does not mean incompetence.
And interesting failure in this game is a prerequisite to even being able to roll. If you failing a roll doesn't make something interesting happen, we don't even bother rolling in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is a great way to look at it. I've taken that attitude forward into everything since like looking at Burning Wheel, because that's so much more intriguing if you only care about rolls that matter.
In order to roll, it must matter to someone's beliefs. There must be an interesting there must be a chance of failure, and there must be an interesting consequence of failure.
Yeah, because the amount of times that every character at the table at D&D rolled to break down a door in like successive conga line of pain on the wooden door.
I failed to pick the lock. I'll pick it again. Things like
until
that.
you hit the check is dumb.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
so
by the rules of this
Burning
game,
Wheel,
you can't do that.
Yep. In Burning Wheel, there's two major things here that determine whether or not you roll. There's a rule called say yes or roll, which means that if there's nothing interesting that can happen from the failure of the roll, you just say yes. You and you move on. The player gets what they wanted. No big deal. But if there is something interesting that could happen, you define the terms. Usually, not always, but usually the GM will tell you the consequences of failure before you roll. And there is a rule that says that if death is on the line, it must be made apparent before any rolls are made. Like you will know if failure means death before you even agree to it. Which
actually brings to mind the crossbow incident.
Well, I told you there was a crossbow. It's not my fault if you don't see weapons as deadly implements. That's on.
What? That's fair. That's very fair.
Weapons of war indicate. I spent specific time to call out they have crossbows on their lap. If you approach an armed person, you can assume the armed person can hurt you.
Listen, how many times have people been killed by crossbows? Let's be real here.
Like it's a tool
In the
of
last
killing.
100 years.
It would be. I understand it would be different if I said there was a guard there and like I didn't mention they're armed or
Yeah, that's fair.
sitting there and he's holding a plate or whatever. That's different from he's holding a weapon.
Yes. No, you were right. So do we want to talk about obstacles? I don't think there's that much to say about obstacles.
Obs were just pretty straightforward. It's 3
Yeah.
was
most of them
difficult,
are in the
4
book.
was challenging, 5 was damn near impossible.
Yeah, that's the number of successes, number of usually 4s or higher on your dice you want to roll.
Yeah.
Burning Wheel gives there's a specific list of obstacles with some examples of like here's the general default. When trying to persuade people, your obstacle is their will stat.
Yeah.
And then there are a few different ones. You can also roll a versus test, so you're rolling against another character, player or NPC.
Versus tests were neat because someone almost always wins in a versus test
Yes.
because they're rolling with the same rules, or as
Yeah.
opposed to a static obstacle means there's a pretty high chance of failure. But with a versus test, someone wins.
Yes, someone wins in a versus test, especially when there's 2 player characters doing it.
Yeah.
Someone gets what they want over another person.
I think by default, anytime you versus test, someone gets what they want unless
the tie
the other
rolled.
person. Unless no tie, you go to stats.
Tie. That's true. I think you're right.
You go to stats, and then defender wins.
Yeah, so you're right. Someone
wins every versus test, making them more interesting, in my opinion, than a standard test, because someone gets their objective and the other person pointedly doesn't.
Yes. Versus tests are interesting because of that. And then the other common type, I think, are graduated tests as well. And so that is roll against obstacle 0 or 1. Roll and ignore the obstacle. And the more successes you get, the better you do. This is usually something where there isn't a specific obstacle. This is like, I want to know it's something vague. I want to know general things. I want to sneak as close as I can without getting caught, or something like that. I want to, I want to.
How much do I know about
do as
situation?
well as I can, broadly or generally, ready to stop when I'm not going to risk myself. Is usually
most of the time it's for knowledge.
Yeah, graduated tests are usually for knowledge or perception, depending on how things are set up by the GM.
Yeah.
From the player's perspective, the one thing I'd say about obstacles is basically that I noticed that was pretty much what the GM was spending their time doing, looking up and finding what the proper obstacle was, that or role-playing. And that was interesting in this is their role in this game. Or it looked like
you're a referee.
Yeah,
especially in this game.
As the GM, you are much more of a mediator in Burning Wheel than especially in our game, because it was literally 4-on-4. It was a social tavern brawl the entire time.
Yeah.
And to its credit, that's my favorite way to GM is to mediate, as opposed to be the source of the story like you kind of have to be in some other systems. Mediating's fun because I love the argument point of it. I love the lawyering to be no, I can do this with my fortitude.
Yeah.
I love that lawyering where you try to tailor what you're doing to your skills.
Yeah,
because it really makes you think about what approach would a character with these skills take to that task.
Yeah.
As opposed to, if you don't lawyer, you just go for the most obvious answer, meaning you're not that great of a character if you're not using your skills. You want to use your skills, you go for the interesting approach because that's what you're going to be the best at.
Yep.
And I like that lawyering forces you to do that.
Yep.
It reminds me of stars in a way.
Yeah, I can see that. But I think
unlike with the stat thing.
With the skills and stats. I think unlike Stars Without Number though, you can learn new skills over time.
Yeah.
In Burning Wheel.
And skills that you're not rolling can help your roll, because you can use what's called a field of related knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also
every persuasion test can most persuasion tests can include a little bit of seduction to make them more potent. It's great.
Yeah. And so that's actually how I built my character. Was I started with high perception, which is a lot of skills are based on, especially as a doctor spy. That's noticing things, knowledge things. It's most of the mental stuff that is not social and not willpower based. I built my character around fields of related knowledge. I had like 4 different doctoring skills, and often one or two of them, when I was rolling one of them, would help me with the others. When I was doing spy stuff, at one point I think I forked in like 6. My like biggest character roll was also my biggest skill roll in terms of forks because of the number of things that related to it. I had like intrigue wise was a skill, so my character was familiar with intrigue. It can be very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically when you're assembling your dice pool, you take your dice from your skill that you're using to roll, and then based on your role play, hopefully, add in the skills that help. So again, if you're spying on people, adding in an intrigue wise to your observation will help.
Yeah. And if
be
I'm
able to
saying
suss
hidden,
things out.
also adding stealthy is another skill that would help. Things
Yep.
like that.
Yeah.
It's
Well, just to keep us moving.
Yeah.
The learning new skills was part of that too. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And learning new skills is we didn't experience a lot of that, I think. I think the
No.
only skill that
I
we
did it
fully
in the roading
learned was orienteering. That's because we were
Yeah.
traveling basically nonstop during it.
Yeah, and
Rolling
we
around
had
and
orienteering.
everything.
Yeah.
A bit
And in
difficult to
our
learn new skills.
in our mercenary game, we started with a higher life path limit, so you guys already had a lot of skills and decent
Yes.
exponents.
We started
in them,
with
so you really
5.
didn't.
Standards 4.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what that was like. I enjoyed it. But I think learning new skills is one of the segments where Burning Wheel shows its intended campaign length. Burning Wheel is not, to use the metaphor, a flash fire which burns hot and fast and quick and it's done.
No.
It is a slow roasting coal, like it's there's just smoldering coal there.
I am so excited to play like a 4-year-long, boring ass Burning Wheel game.
Yes, that is.
Recommended.
Like I will show up every week for Farming Sim Hobbit Town, like we talked
Our
about.
game, we intentionally compressed it to 9 sessions because we didn't want to play it for too long because we have other games that we also wanted to play.
Yeah,
but Burning Wheel is meant to be played over like at least a year.
Long time. Yeah.
The recommended campaign length is 20 to 50 sessions.
Yes.
So
we did half a campaign. We did
It's
one
a short
adventure.
campaign.
We did the first arc of a campaign.
And even then,
Which
you're
makes
kind
sense.
of trying to speed through it at points.
Yeah.
But learning new skills, I think, still works. Learning a new skill is interesting because it doesn't strongly penalize you. There is a penalty when you're doing a skill you don't know, but because oftentimes the penalty, the obstacle gets doubled, basically. And that's the thing. But oftentimes, the number of dice you're rolling is higher than your normal skill dice would be for similar skills. So rolling like 4 or 6 dice against an obstacle.
It actively encourages you to learn new skills.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not built for the...
Sorry, go ahead.
My point was, if you're the fish out of water character at the beginning of the story, like if you're playing a character who's explicitly not where they're supposed to be, that'll exist at first, but by the new skill system, you slowly acclimate to your new situation, being equipped for it.
Yep.
So you can have fun playing a character who's not where they're supposed to be, and then by session 3 or 4, you've picked up enough skills to keep up. Your story is about learning those skills, and that makes it possible. Where in D&D, if you're a fish out of water, you just have to wait for the dungeon to be cleared if you like loot XP.
I mean, actually,
to
we're
survive.
In 5th edition, we're experiencing that now with our Necromancer in a temple full of undead and creatures that resist or are immune to necrotic damage. And I have
magic missile.
Magic missiles. He's used a crossbow. He's a wizard using a crossbow, or lightning bolts. And last time he used lightning bolts,
Some things are immune to lightning.
It was like the one thing that was immune to lightning he used it on.
But
I have a solution to that that's coming, by the way, Jordan. Don't worry.
Okay.
But getting back to the analogy, like you can take Frodo straight out of the Shire, only knowing pastoral skill, and by the time you get to Mount Doom, you know how to survive.
Yeah, this
You know.
is that slow journey of you see them like practicing or trying and failing, everything like that. You start off with the first time Merry and Pippin fight, they're grabbed by the orcs. By the end of the trilogy, they are killing orcs.
Mhm.
Yep. This is definitely if you want to play Lord of the Rings,
Which
use
I
Burning
do.
Wheel. Yeah.
Well, if
Just
you
burn
want to play a
Burning Wheel.
game where you see characters actually grow and
Yeah.
not just level up, oh, I got this set of new things that I can do.
Yeah.
You know, this is
No, they
Yeah.
have to
more
work on it.
organic, you know.
I mean, every D&D game has the issue very often where, like, I spent 20 years studying to be a wizard, and now that I am a player character wizard, in 20 days, I became a 20th level wizard. Like, it's just player character
Yeah.
growth is just rocketing. Like, they advance very quickly.
Well, also, D&D character growth is stepped.
It is very much stepped.
You do it in
Yeah.
leaps, whereas in Burning Wheel, you do it in, like,
One by
footsteps.
one, yeah, single
Yeah.
You know,
footsteps.
one
single...
test after
So-
another, you slowly get better.
Yeah, so just so the basics are said, when you're testing a skill, there are 3 different types of tests depending on how hard it is for you to do what you want to do. And you log those tests.
Mhm.
And once you log a certain amount of them, you level up that skill to the next highest number.
Exactly.
You get 1 more die.
Yeah.
And going back to talking about failure, one of the ones that's required is called a challenging test, where the obstacle is higher than the number of dice you have. Without spending Artha, which we'll get to, it is impossible to succeed that test. Everything
Without
else,
Artha and help and a
help
bunch
will
of other
reduce
things,
the
yeah.
obstacle. Help will
Oh,
reduce.
that's
Help
right.
reduces
Yeah.
the
It's
thing.
only Artha will give you extra dice without reducing no longer making it a challenging test.
Yeah.
And so
It was kind of interesting. If you had a skill that you were really good at, you're a sword master, it's only going to count if you're getting really difficult tests. Because if you're doing a routine thing, beating someone who's never used a sword before, that's not going to help you grow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You can't
Again-
XP grind the goblins.
yeah, it wasn't in
And
this
that
campaign.
forces all the players to go into more and more challenging positions.
Yes, it wasn't
Like,
in this campaign.
This is a game about throwing your characters directly into the tiger's mouth and just hoping for the best.
Yes.
Though in some cases, when your skills were very low already, it could be incredibly difficult to get those easy tests, simply because I have field bandaging of 2. That means I can bandage a scrape. Is anything interesting ever going to come of my failing to bandage a scrape? No, not
Yeah.
really. And besides that, anything that comes up is going to be a lot harder. So it could have
That's
difficulties when you
probably-
had
Well,
lower ones, but-
that's negated by
yeah.
2 things. We only kind of touched on one, and then the second one we didn't touch on at all for that like low skill problem. The help that gives you the bonus tests.
Mhm.
We
Yes.
did that a little bit. That's really what you're supposed to do in those situations where I skill, but I'm
Yeah.
not an expert, so I'm helping someone, so
Yes.
I get the points.
Yeah, load on the forks or help someone else's test.
Yeah. And then the downtime where you could spend hours of your life grinding away at a skill is
Yeah.
also meant to.
I
Yes.
did that a
account for
little
that.
bit, but then things progressed in the story where it didn't make
Yeah, and
sense
I didn't
anymore
at
to
all.
do that.
So so those are the 2 things.
Once again, that's a longer term thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long term thing.
And when it came to
But yeah, moving.
increasing the shade in the story, like as opposed to buying it at the beginning within the story and using the Artha to do that, that was super interesting because that was a sudden. You are better at this for this period of time.
Yes.
And that only triggered because you spent a bunch of points that made to go with the belief and instincts and whatnot
Yes.
on that.
So we had 1 deeds point during our game that was ordered to Krim. Wait, where's Krim on the Krim? That way on the way. Down to your okay. For killing a horrible creature.
Yeah.
And so Krim was able to do something called an Aristeia, I believe. It's a fancy term for temporarily increasing your shade for a scene. It was an important scene. It was a big duel. It was climactic. It was like we literally called the episode, if you'll see on the YouTube playlist, Duel of Fates. because of that duel.
Because we have very little.
Well, yeah, we have
planning
no
for these days.
originality. Our next show was called Cease and Desist. You can see on the overlay. Of course, it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I was naming the episodes within 5 seconds of being he told Jordan, "What's the name of the episode?" Like, this.
Yes.
First thing that came up.
In addition to that, that is a temporary increase. I believe if you do that 3 times, it becomes permanent to the same skill.
Basically,
that
you
work again?
have to spend. Okay, so
You spend the spent points.
yeah, you track all of the points you spent on the skill that was being rolled,
Let's get
and
to
once it
Artha.
gets up to a certain threshold, you can shade shift. But that
Yes.
threshold is something like 20 fate points. I want to say 5 persona and the deeds, or 3
And one
deeds, or
deed,
something
yeah.
like that.
You need 1 deed.
Yeah.
No, for
So it was
permanent.
a
I
little
think it's
unclear
No, I
occasionally
think
if
it's
you had to
still 1
spend
deed.
it at the time.
it?
Or
I
if
thought it was 3 deeds for.
Well, there's a limit. It's not that high, but like
Okay.
you have to spend spent points to permanently shade shift. So you have
Yeah.
to actively invest your points.
Yeah. And
That's the
that
important
is the
part.
longest thing in the entire game. Is
I don't know. That's resource cycles, buddy.
Yeah.
Resource cycle.
Yeah, 3 deeds, 10 persona, and 20 fate to shade shift.
That's a lot.
Which
That's
also
lot
says a lot about how common it expects deeds points to be.
Not very.
Yeah, because they don't expect gray to show up that much.
That's true. The deeds points are very small.
That's one of the customization points of Burning Wheel. If your GM is trying to go for more like high heroics, high fantasies, yeah, there's more deeds points.
Yeah, be more
If it's
flexible.
more setting.
Do you want to just skip forward to Artha and come back to the bits after? Because I think Artha can lead into bits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're talking a lot about Artha. Artha is Burning Wheel has its own glossary.
We're basically almost wrapping up Artha there for that.
Yeah. Artha comes in 3 types. Fate is the most common, still useful, but relatively least useful type. That's you spend it to get exploding 6s on dice if they don't already have them. If they already have exploding 6s, which a few do by default, then you spend it to re-roll 1 die that was not a success.
Reroll traders.
Yeah, it was 1, I believe.
Yeah. But you get, most of the time you get fate for just existing in your character's skin. Like you get it if you use your instincts to make things complicated. You do it if you work towards your beliefs. You get it if you play towards your traits.
If it comes up, like there's so many sources of fate.
Basically, you get fate for playing your character according to how your character is built. So if you play a knight like a knight, you're gonna get fate in the game.
Yep. Yeah. Fate is the easiest one to get. It is in many ways expected. If you try to get other ones and don't, it'll often default back to fate. Yeah. Next are persona. This one you get for a few ways, but the most common one is accomplishing your character's goals, usually that are tied to the beliefs. Achieving something. It isn't actually written in stone that this is something tied to a belief, but it is oftentimes and most easy to ascertain when it is written into a belief. But it could be anything. If there's a party goal or a group goal that no one has a belief about, but it's still something you work together to accomplish, you still all get a persona for it.
Yeah, the party was trying to find the little girl taken by werewolf in the night. Then if they for example, and they achieve that, that could be a goal that every person in the party gets persona for.
Yeah.
Like if they do the thing and achieve it, they return the quest, they get persona.
Yeah. But you also get
more personal quest
for Mold Breaker is a big one, basically, where your own beliefs and instincts, that basically is the ultimate inner conflict or like reward for having your character.
Yeah, when faced with a tough decision, using your character sheet to determine which way you break on that decision.
Yes, and it's important to you have to portray the inner conflict, even if it's just a few sentences. It's like, my character wants this and this, or they are like this, but they want to be like this, or it's just inner conflict. Play it, you portray it, and then at the end of the session, you get persona for it.
Yeah.
most interesting use of Persona was that stockpiling or keeping one in reserve to just keep your character alive.
Yes, Persona can be
there
used
is
for two
an
ability
things.
optional
to
rule.
not have put all of this time and effort and work into playing this character and then just have one unlucky roll and they're dead now.
Yeah,
And actually having that persona in reserve was a really nice touch on the system.
Well,
Persona has
well,
two
what that
uses.
does-
Let's talk about what the uses are
Yeah.
first. One, you spend a Persona to get an extra die for a skill roll, or roll in general. Actually,
Yeah.
this is the only time when you get extra dice without it affecting the difficulty when it comes to advancement, which I mentioned earlier. You can do this up to 3 times, spending a Persona each for a single roll. Additionally, you can spend
it's an
one
optional
Persona.
rule, to be fair.
That is fair. You're right. It is an optional rule. Honestly, it's one I really like. Because
Yeah, I like it too. I'm not saying
one
that's a
I
problem.
would recommend everyone do.
Yeah.
You can spend a Persona when your character would die to not die, even though you should, and to have them hold on, and it still means they're in trouble or in a terrible situation, but it stops them from dying.
Yeah.
And it makes
Yeah.
it so you are able to be reckless with your characters without having to actually worry that you'd have to make a new character.
Well, I feel it the opposite direction. I feel that making the players responsible for their life and death via, if you don't want to die, hold on to a persona. That power is now in the player's hand to say no to character death. So they're responsible for holding on to that. That means the game master doesn't need to care about killing characters.
And
if characters die, characters die. If they wanted to live, they should have held on to their own persona. And I love that.
Time when I did the climactic duel with Gale, like the fact that I had spent my last persona going into that duel, it made the level of tension so much higher for me because I knew that if I died, I was done.
Yeah, Jordan, your character intended to kill her, and even knowing that, because it was meant to be like a duel to decide who does something, but Jordan, your character decided, like, no, if I win, I'm going to kill her. As a player, Marissa, you knew that and spent your last persona anyways.
Yeah.
Intentionally making sure death was being risked, knowingly in character or out of character, and
you can
went in
choose
with that drama, basically.
Yeah.
And because of this rule, I would actually recommend, we didn't do this with the Rodin game, I don't think we did this either for our games, I'd probably recommend starting with at least one persona on each character, because then in the first session, you are able to be just as reckless as you wish you could be in future sessions. I found this with my character in the Rodin game, Mick, was...
when I shot you in the neck.
Yes, and we basically acted like I had a persona anyways, frankly.
Because that was more interesting.
Exactly. And... so starting with at least 1 and 1 allows player characters from the beginning to say, I want to stick with this character until I don't want to anymore. And I don't have to be scared as a player for my character because during session 1 is the big thing that I find.
Yeah.
I will say you still have to be scared for your character, because spending that persona point, you're not going to die, but we don't supersede the narrative. You're not coming out of that unscathed.
I agree.
It's not like
I'm not scared that I'm losing my character, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
Or frustrated, or having to build a new one, or anything like that.
Yeah, you're given pretty plainly the option with that rule where you can say, all right, you have 2 choices. A, they die. Make a new character.
Yeah.
Or B, they live, but it's going to suck a lot. And
they might wish they were dead.
Yeah.
So that really gives the player agency to pick what kind of story they want. If they don't want to play a story of suffering, they build a new character.
Exactly. So this is I think why it's a small thing, starting with Artha, even just starting with just a persona specifically because of this, even if it's Zero Fate, is a small preferential recommendation of mine.
Yeah, and that highly depends on the game too, because if you're playing that gritty simulationist realism, like no magic at all, just a bunch of guys in the muck duking it out for survival.
No starting Artha.
No. Yeah. No, none of that. But yeah.
Burning Wheel allows you to do many different types of games as
All medieval fantasy.
yeah,
Medieval
all medieval
fantasy.
fantasy.
Well, the setting is medieval fantasy. The genre.
I mean, like the tone.
Yeah, the
Medieval
tone
through
and
Renaissance, I should say.
True.
I'll
Yeah.
correct that. Like you can go further than medieval.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a limited range, but a larger range than like Dungeons and Dragons, for example. But there's a limited range of kinds of stories you can play with this that work really well.
Yep. All of them.
Mostly
Guys.
focused on people.
Yeah.
How do we gain Artha?
So, yeah.
that's probably a good segue into
Yeah.
How you play the game. Really, the driving force of this game revolves around 3 words: beliefs, instincts, and traits. Characters will have 3 beliefs. Usually it's some state, some drive or purpose that they have. Like, I believe the king is an imposter. I will unthrone the king. Perfectly good belief. Instincts are things that can automatically happen. Like, I always draw my sword when danger comes. Things
Never
like
leave
that.
home without my wallet.
Yep. Whenever
Yeah,
surprised,
exactly.
hesitate.
You can always invoke those as a player to tell the GM, oh no, I have an instinct about always keeping my armor on. I'm definitely in my armor right now.
Yes, and no one else can force.
They can
your
also
instinct
break
upon
the other
you.
way.
You get to control when your instinct comes into play, positively or negatively.
Yeah. And you can have negative instincts as well, like when I see an unattended pie, I steal it.
That's a good instinct, especially in like a culinary themed game.
Yes.
Like I can't help.
There's also the fact that's a really good instinct because it could be either positive or negative to just always have some pie on you or things like that. Just like happen to have some on you.
And when an instinct gets you into trouble, you earn some Artha.
Yeah.
So there's the nudge there to be like, do the bad thing. Go on, just try the bad thing.
The double-edged sword is trouble, but you get Artha. Or you can use instincts to nullify or like almost like auto flashback to not getting into a certain type of trouble. Like, always have a weapon on you. One of my characters had an instinct of like always get close enough whenever talking with someone, always get close enough to stab if things go wrong. It was a wordy one, but basically if things ever went wrong and I drew my dagger to stab them, I never had to worry about getting close enough to do so. I was.
Yeah. And
I
then
had a great instinct of always go for the hands. When things get tense, go for the hands.
Yep, and you stabbed me in the hand.
I automatically stabbed people in hands as soon as I felt like it was a tense situation.
Yeah, like when the climax was upon us, I changed all of my instincts to I don't want to die instincts, which was like always some of my axe, always make sure I'm like close enough to axe people, and then like I always had my armor on because it wasn't like clear.
And beliefs
these
and
two
instincts
there you go.
are very mutable. They can be changed. They can be 2 things. Once you write it for a session, it's generally locked in there. But if you made a mistake, it's pretty much up to a group. If they're okay with it, you can probably still change it. But beliefs and instincts, generally, you write it in for the session. You can change it every session. You could also leave it blank and write it in mid-session if you aren't sure or want to, or there's too many possibilities of how things might play out. So you're leaving it blank and want to write it later. So it's very, very adaptable.
And
but traits are not.
Yeah. Among this group, there was a lot of variation.
Yeah, there was. No, go ahead.
Among this group, there was a lot of variation as to whether or not those beliefs or instincts stayed static or if they changed a lot. And I'd be curious to know how that went with the other side.
As a GM, you mean?
I changed my beliefs and traits every single session, pretty much, in order to make sure that it fit things, and it moved my character around a lot, though I often cycled back to old beliefs and traits if I thought that they were still relevant. That played very nicely for me because I was able to always keep my character relevant. How did it work for people who are keeping the traits and beliefs the same?
I didn't change mine a lot. I changed them when I crossed them off or something happened to make them change. But
Yeah, same.
I treat my traits and stuff as unless acted upon, why would they change? Is my opinion on it. So if I believe this one day, unless something happens to change my mind, it'll do that. But also that I don't like having to dynamically change it in between sessions because I'll forget things or I'll not do it or whatever. So it's easier for me to keep track of my character if they don't change unless they need to be.
Yeah. And for
So
me,
that fluidity was positive.
I was intentionally trying to get as much persona as I could, which means I intentionally wrote my beliefs to have goals in them that I could accomplish this session, which worked about 50% of the time. And I intentionally changed my beliefs after doing it every session. I had my 3 beliefs for my character, and then I had another list on the side of unofficial beliefs that I would basically put in. It's like putting in the like keeping it on the side. It's my beliefs in reserve because the beliefs written down are the ones that I want to matter this session. That's how I treated it. Is like these are the ones I want to highlight this session. This is the parts of my character that I think will matter, be interesting, or will get me Artha this session.
Yeah, and I was probably the most in between because I would, for the most part, keep my beliefs. But if something like changed, where it's like, well, this doesn't really matter anymore. I didn't have like an official list of like side beliefs, but I would go in my head like, okay, based on what I know about the character, what sort of belief could I change it to that is more fitting for what's happening right now?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the ways you flag character growth for yourself is like, okay, they believed this, but then this happened. And now I have to, I have to change how I believe to move on.
Yeah.
And from a GM side, though, the beliefs and instincts of this game are all the GM needs to know besides the inciting incident like setup of the game, because the player's beliefs are what you chase after and what you hit them with during a session.
Yes. The GM's entire purpose is to challenge the player character's beliefs. Like, even between beliefs, instincts, traits, beliefs are most important. They're first, and they're first for a reason. And I would say followed by instincts and followed by traits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as a player, if you want to flag to the GM, hey, I'd be interested in exploring what happens this way, you can use your belief to tell them that let's put the story in this direction and see what happens.
Yep. Exactly. But there's the traits we haven't talked about a lot yet.
Yeah.
Traits are not mutable. You buy them during character creation. They are like, say, if you can describe your character as hairy, then they are a hairy person. They have like thick dark hair all over them. If you buy the hairy trait, then one of the first things people notice about you is that you are hairy. You are the hairiest person around, basically.
Yeah.
Traits are not explicitly unique, but they are significant, and they're if you have 2 characters with hairy, they are the 2 hairiest people around. Things like that.
There is a sorry.
They're like big deal descriptors. Some of personality, some of
the easiest example I give is I am under 6 feet tall, but I am, like 5'10", 5'11". I am tall, but I do not have the tall trait. Like, I am not capital T tall. When you look at me, your first thought is, that's not a tall person. That's just a person-sized person. But I am a taller person. But that's the difference. A trait, if I was 6'7", I would be tall. Capital T tall. When you look at me, you think they're tall. But now it's just, no, they're just a person who is taller than average.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't have the trait.
In the College of Magic setting, there is a trait you can buy called Tall Hat, where you are known as having the tallest hat.
Good trait.
That is a trait you can buy.
Other great traits are smells of cheese.
Yep. There's a lot of weird traits, but there's a lot of good traits.
So
character trait.
I don't think we'll get into the details of how traits work when it comes to dice, because that can get quite complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot. They're complicated.
But there are 3 types of traits.
2 other.
And some of them, they're all intended to be character traits that describe the character. And in addition, some of them will cost multiple points and they will affect your dice. Some of them will be sometimes called a call-on trait. They'll break ties or re-roll, I think, 1 failure. I don't remember how that works.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Call out
All
your
traders?
evil dice.
Yeah.
Die
And
traits
then
give
above
you
that,
special
there's die
powers.
traits, which are either special powers or they will always affect certain skill rolls under some
Yeah,
circumstances.
they're feats, basically.
They're
Basically, they're
special
feats.
powers, 5th
Yeah.
edition feats, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. So,
They're
But
both
they are
tough.
both positive and negative. Like there are,
yes.
and I think actually there's more negative traits than positive technically.
Yeah.
in
And
the ones that have
all
mechanics
traits,
behind
negative
them.
and positive, cost points. They're even negative traits don't give you negative points or like give you points back or anything like that because you're not building your character to be powerful. The point of this game
It's
is to
building
make
the
your
character
character
to
to
be
interesting.
interesting and
Well,
dramatic.
The thing is, in this game, because of the reward system, when you have a negative trait and you use that to break the story in a different direction, you get a reward.
Yep.
Like
And so
my
that's why
alcoholic
having
trait was
you are sort
incredibly
of
useful.
powerful
Yeah,
for having negative
you
traits.
powered your success with booze and
Yeah.
rampant
Powered
alcohol.
you with alcohol. That's how you did it.
Yeah. Exactly. We had like if someone has a missing arm and they lose a fight because of it, Game of Thrones, then they would get fate for that. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of things.
And
The
then
thing that
also, oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to move on to the trait vote, where we actually got to
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
whether or not we wanted to keep playing with the traits or basically add on different traits to different
Yeah.
characters.
So a trait vote
And-
happens arbitrarily. It's intended to happen once every like arc or every chapter. It doesn't give specific details. The group figures it out, and I think that's fine. We did it once during our campaign.
And
Yeah, that was
that
mostly
trait
just
vote was so much fun because it was a great time to be able to figure out, okay, what do all the other players think about this
and
character?
it does a tone shift. Like it changed the tone of the game changed after the trait vote. Dramatic. Like
Yeah.
it was noticeable change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The characters.
So during a trait vote, the players come together and basically nominate new traits for the people that they've been watching. They act as the audience and be
Yeah.
like, no, this character is exhibiting this trait, so they should have it on their sheet. And then we all nominate traits and vote, and that you walk away more often than not, you will walk away with something new.
Yes. And I think in our specific instance of doing it, our characters became more extreme versions of themselves because our game was short and because our characters hadn't had time to change that much. If we did another one at the end of our campaign, like right now at the end of our session 9 with the epilogue,
Oh yeah.
that would have been very different. And the trait vote
I'd have one leg.
Yeah, the trait vote is meant to basically describe like make it so the mechanics of traits, which are normally immutable, do change with the characters, but in a way that's interesting and in a way that you can play to a trait even if you don't have it in order to get it next time. You're basically Oscar baiting for a trait.
Yeah. It's like you don't dress up for the job you have, you dress up for the job you want.
Yeah.
Right? It's that sort of
And
thing.
by that same token, you could use the trait vote strategically to make other players play how you want to. So if you want another player to exhibit something they haven't been highlighting, you could angle them in with the trait vote to force them to be angrier or
That sounds like
more-
a tremendous segue.
yeah, you can force people to like play a way that you think would be interesting by suggesting it. It's a fun, fair way to suggest. You say like,
Yes.
I would like you to play. You offer it forth. I would like
Yeah.
you to
Yes.
be more
And
hate-filled or whatever
with-
for your character from like an audience perspective. I think that would be interesting. So you put that in the trait vote, and if everyone agrees with you, then that character could move in that direction, which could cause for fun character turns because it's like, oh, I never thought about my character being this kind of person, but if someone else thinks it'll be interesting, you can roll it on for size.
Yep.
Yep. And then you constantly ask them to do it.
Yes.
Do it.
So I think the specific procedure we use for the trait vote is not built into the book. I don't think it actually goes into a lot of detail with how to do it. Does it? I could be wrong.
basically just says that every player nominates a trait for all of the other characters, including themselves.
Okay.
And then
you list
vote
them.
on it.
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah,
However,
that's
you
what we did.
determine that vote. If like we used a ranking system for voting just to ensure everybody took away 2 traits because I wanted to see change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And I think we all had some traits that we were pretty keen to get rid of that we had to start with.
Yeah,
Mm.
and that's the other thing you can do with a trait vote is between the GM and the player, so the other people aren't involved. You talk about getting rid of one of the traits per trait, one of the
Yeah,
traits.
which is how you would get rid of one of those traits from your life path. That's like, I don't see my character being like this, which is what I did. Like, I had misunderstood, which didn't really make sense because he had sort of grown up with the mercenary company,
Hmm.
right? And then that was voted off.
Yep.
He's no longer misunderstood.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think traits are interesting. They're the trait vote is, I think, the best part of traits. How we did it and how fun it is. But yeah, after that we have a few different subsystems. Basically, though that has all that we've talked about been the main component of the game and what you will be engaging with. Probably
99% of the time.
I would say like 80 to 90 because some of the things that are coming,
you can run the entire game without stop the entire game and then
without
come back and see
anything
what we have to
else.
say.
In fact, I would recommend it because it's still a lot to learn.
There's still a lot.
Then
It's a very complex game. It's not
Yes.
it's not hard, but there's a
it's
lot
like-
of little pieces.
yeah, it's like unlearning or like learning how to run Burning Wheel and play Burning Wheel and unlearning other things that you've learned from almost every
Well,
role-playing
it's
game.
because it uses it really very much feels like older editions of like our role-playing games where you would get smaller pamphlets for different things. So if you want to do a sea adventure, you get the sea adventure rules. If you want to do a big debate, you get the debate rules. If you want to do
Yep.
a big fight, you get the fight rules. If
Yep.
you want to do
Yeah.
something, it's pieces. You only include the pieces that are necessary for your story. If your story
Yes.
never has a big fight, you never touch the fight system. You don't bother learning it. If you
Yep.
never have ranged combat, same thing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
What we're
So,
saying is, if you want a DLC for an RPG,
this would be the
that's what
closest
the
thing, probably.
subsystems are. Is
Uh,
deal.
Let's
And
start
everything
off.
we've talked about
Oh.
before, just so it's said, is in the free hub and spokes on the Burning Wheel HQ. You
Yeah.
can go check it out, read through it all. The
Yep.
life path system isn't in there. You'll have to actually get the book for that, but there are a couple of adventures that are free as well with if you want to go check it.
Yes, with pre-built characters. So you can play it using those. I think let's start off with Steel and then go with Resources and Circles because I think those three will be the quickest to talk about before we get to the other ones.
Yeah.
Steel is simply this: it is being shocked as a mechanic, which I find really interesting, and B led to some very important story moments with us as mercenaries and encountering supernatural and bloodshed and other things. There's no like you don't your character mechanically cannot react like a player character. Where like I immediately draw my sword, roll initiative, let's do this. It is okay. How shocked are you? How much bloodshed have you seen in the past? That is what Steel is. The higher Steel your character has, the more unfazed they are. Speaking of Blades in the Dark, this is a bit of a tangent. Leviathan hunters would have high Steel because they've seen some
They've
stuff.
seen some shit.
Yeah.
Like
So
I do like Steel for that reason of like the more stuff you have been exposed to, the like more desensitized you are to it.
yes, and what this means mechanically is you hesitate less. You are shocked less. You do not like just stand there eyes wide. That's
Yeah.
The perspective of trying to build a strong character, though, Steel was frustratingly impossible to get higher. Because Steel was always tested against, when you were rolling dice, your hesitation. And your hesitation was
Usually a set
always
number.
higher than your Steel,
Yes.
pretty
Oh,
much.
no.
Unless your Steel was really high
Unless you have a
already.
high will.
So if you had a low Steel, your hesitation was going to be high. All of your rolls were going to be challenging. Getting a routine test was basically tracking things that happened throughout the game and saying, I would have gotten a test then, but we didn't roll. Can I have it afterwards?
Well, basically,
Yes.
it's
Which I didn't
small
love.
tests that don't matter. Well, it's the
Yeah.
say yes or roll dice logical conclusion of Steel, or it's not interesting if you're afraid of someone drawing their sword and threatening violence. That's not an interesting like story point, so you don't roll Steel. But once again, to counter your point of like, yes, you can only, it's super hard to get those small tests. It's the way to get the small test is running into scary stuff. It's not scary enough to matter for a Steel test.
Yeah.
Like since we were all sort of
And
mercenaries, people
basically-
getting stabbed didn't matter.
And basically the way you get those smaller tests is logging them, because the pacing in Burning Wheel is a bit dynamic. We don't necessarily track moment to moment, so you hesitating for half a second might not matter if we're just rolling skills. But if someone's got a knife to your throat, those couple seconds are going to matter. That's when you
Or you're
roll.
in a duel. That might matter.
For some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you get
Or you're
scared by an
drinking
earthquake,
potions.
Yeah.
if you get scared by an earthquake, it doesn't matter if you react right away.
Not
So-
necessarily, yeah. Exactly.
But I mean, just like scared by the fact it's happening, not like a rock
there's-
falling, whatever.
Even in real life, there's a few moments that it's happening. You're like, what? Oh,
What's
guess
going
it's
on?
happening.
Yeah, that's you failing your steel test. But you're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
You're hesitating.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite simple.
That's
I
steel.
think that's it.
Yeah, I like steel. Steel's good.
Yeah.
Me
Steel's
too.
good.
Resources is what we talked about.
didn't
The abstraction. Sorry.
We didn't really use them.
We didn't use them
No.
a lot. No,
No.
we started with our stuff. We didn't have a lot of things combined. We didn't do a resource cycle. Usually, trade vote and resource cycle can be done at the same time, but our game took place over the course of like a week.
It was like a week.
Yeah, and it's a prime example of only use what you need in the book. Like,
Yep.
we didn't need the resources rules, so
So we didn't use it at all.
We didn't use it.
Yeah.
To shorthand how it works, just for those who might be watching this and not having played Burning Wheel. You want to buy a thing, you have resources, dice. You roll the dice to get it. I actually got some money, but never ended up using it.
Use it to
And
get out of town.
if you either don't get it, or you get it but you lose some of your resource dice temporarily, and resource can go up or down. I think oftentimes if you fail them, it can go down much more rapidly as a result of you losing money. And so it is another interesting thing when it comes to role if the beliefs matter. In classic D&D senses, buying things usually doesn't matter for beliefs. That's another thing where say yes or roll also applies not just to skills, but to everything. And so
and it's
sometimes we'll just
another
say yes
thing
to
that
beliefs.
drives those characters. Like, if you definitely need that money to buy that sword, you're gonna go out and do other things and drive yourself. Like, if you have that belief, you're gonna drive yourself to increase your skills and in order to get that. Like,
Yeah, if you're a peasant starting a revolution, we care a lot about money because you're.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you're nobles, we don't care about money because you're rich. Money's not
Yeah.
interesting anymore.
If you're buying a sword to put it on your wall, it doesn't matter. If you're buying a sword to kill your brother, that matters. So,
Circles?
Yeah.
circles.
Speaking of
Killing your
circles,
Barely used mechanics.
we used it a couple times, but it was more like
we did.
Cardinal.
Cardinal, yeah.
So back in the Lifepath system, I mentioned there were a bunch of different settings, like sub-settings within each. They're called stock, the races that populate the worlds of Burning Wheel. When you belong to a certain setting, you have access to the same people that exist in that setting. So if you're a farmer, you would know the people that work in the fields. You would know the miller. You'd know the baker in town. And Circles gives you access to that. Basically, you can make a roll to summon up a person that is tangentially related to your lifestyle. And have them come in and either help or hurt you, depending on, or help or hinder, I should say, not hurt, depending on the outcome of the roll. A bad roll could mean that they still show up, but you
you owe them a debt.
they were the one that they were the one that broke up your brother's marriage, and they hate you. Like things like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is the twist. It is the classic one that is brought up, even though actually we're about to watch it at some point soon, I think, rewatching Star Wars, is Han saying, I know a guy, let's go to Cloud City. Lando, my friend Lando's there, he's cool. He fails the Circles. He still knows Lando. He still meets up with Lando. Lando's still friendly to him. And it turns out Lando actually already made a deal with the Empire, and they were waiting there for him.
And he still calls him Han.
Han.
That's
Yep.
the worst part of the Circles roll, is he always calls him Han.
Yep. The whole getting turned into carbonite thing was just a side thing. It was being called Han. It's the worst.
That was a series of failed rolls. Is the
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
That is true. That's true. But yeah,
Alright.
that's Circles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
now
Circles and Breeze.
those are the three simpler subsystems.
The unused mechanic I am most sad about is we never got to spite.
Spite?
Spite.
What's spite?
That's
The dark elf
that's a
emotional
dark elf.
mechanic.
Oh,
yeah, that's a
maybe if we ever
emotional
continue this
attributes are a
campaign,
thing.
hatred might
But-
turn into spite.
Yeah. No, it's when elves get
Hmm.
sad enough, they convert their grief into spite, and it's beautiful, and that's emotional mechanics.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay, so what we did use, I think, let's talk about magic last, I think.
because we use that the most. you
We
want to
use
go
it
to
the
Duel of
most.
Wits?
Yeah, let's go into Duel of Wits, because that was probably pretty quick to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, our
Duel
experience
of
with it
Wits
was.
is a rock paper scissors esque game where it's a Duel of Wits is a debate system where
Yeah,
the
powered
both
by
sides
rock,
of the
paper,
debates powered by rock paper scissors esque. You choose your cards face down of your actions of what points and rhetorical comments and what you're going to say in advance. You flip over the cards; they have their own counters or like counter those counters or things like that.
interactions. The
Interactions.
actions interact. with
Both
them.
sides have different levels of
Yes.
kind of HP.
Skill rolls
Yeah.
are done related to what actions those are, and there's basically like discussion HP that each side has, and the first one to reduce to 0 loses with
Yeah,
some
it's-
concessions.
It's complicated to explain, and having gone from reading Burning Wheel to seeing it in action to actually having played it, check out a couple of Let's Plays with Duel of Wits.
Yeah.
Read
Ours
the
does
book,
not have it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, no.
and you still won't quite understand it until you get into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But once you understand it, it is one of the best social combat mechanics I've ever seen in an RPG.
It's extremely well done, but also it's extremely hard to grasp initially because it's so different from.
It makes
Everything
sense.
else.
Just the best advice is trust it. Just do it. Just do the thing as it says, and then make sense of it later.
And
Follow the
recognize
steps.
that if you're a character not statted out for Duel of Wits, for doing social skills, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, don't do it.
No.
Don't try it.
I'm not gonna do
Don't-
well.
It's the playing
Run
to your
away.
strength.
Run away.
Play to your
Run away.
You don't have to run away. It's like what happens during a failure for a skill test. You can do it
Stab.
and fail. Also, yes,
Stab.
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 Yep.
Fail an argument.
There is
That's
a
also-
move in Duel of Wits that is "fuck you, I'm gonna stab you now."
Yeah, it's after the conclusion. It's called Murder Most Foul, and the loser can try to get the other person to be compelled into a duel, or you can just like ambush them in the hallway and just slit their throat.
I just love the idea of the murder most foul thing, where it's like you're arguing, some guy's losing, and she's like he gets there's some rhetorical statement, and then you just like pull a knife and like,
They
let's
just
go.
yeah, in the middle of the crowd. It's like, yeah, they lose, so they get enraged. So they attack you.
me up.
That's what happened during the Civil War. That fight on the Senate floor. It was just a murder most foul.
Exactly.
No, it started as a debate, and then it escalates into a fight. But I love the idea you can escalate into a fight immediately.
Yeah.
First move,
Yeah,
stab.
I call for trial by
I wish we
combat.
could add. The one addition I wish we could add to Burning Wheel as an action is to like throw your shoe at somebody. Just
Yeah. Or
Like, an
audiences could
action
throw
where it's not
tomatoes.
intended to.
Yeah.
It's not intended to hurt them, but it's intended to like throw them off guard.
I mean, you
Make a
can't
skill
escape,
test.
you escape by throwing a shoe, I think.
Yeah.
That's basically
Okay.
what we want.
So yeah, Duel of Wits is excellent.
Yeah.
Similar to it, there are two combat subsystems. Let's talk about Bloody versus quickly. It is slightly more complicated in the skill roll. You basically create your pool as normal, split it between attack and defense, and then roll attacker versus defender on each side.
Bloody versus is the quick fight mechanic, where it's like, all right, we have to do a couple like exchanges.
We want it to be
Let's
more
go
in
back
depth. Yeah, we want it to
real
be.
fast.
Yeah, you want to succeed, but you still want to have like you still want there to be wounds on both sides for the potential. This is the system that is that. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, this is a fair fight, but simplified.
It's basically 2 versus tests.
Yeah, and it's how any beginning group should run combat for a
Yes.
while until you're
Yes.
to
good with
put it
rules.
in D&D, to put it in D&D examples, because that's what we've been doing. Bloody Versus is theater of the mind combat, where the game master says there's 4 goblins approaching you. You go, do your turns real fast. We're not breaking out the battle map.
Yeah, for this
everyone
random
just gets a
encounter
turn.
that's easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone just gets a turn. Let's blast this all out real fast.
Yeah. And then
Whereas-
there's fight, which is
breaking out the battle map, rolling initiative.
Yeah, this is
like,
like battle map,
positioning your
line of sight
character.
indicators. This is going the full 9 yards.
It was
Yeah.
hyper realistic.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So
how do
much
we
so
summarize it
leveling.
quickly?
But
It's like Duel of Wits in the like choose your action simultaneously and they interact with each
Yeah.
other, and the skill rolls. Like it's like that. There are more actions, I believe.
A
Yeah,
lot
many
more.
more.
There's
Yep.
a lot
I
more.
believe there's 36.
Yeah, there's way more options to choose from. There are armor and injuries come into play, which we'll talk about afterwards, but they will come into play for this. For every hit you can take, your armor can just ignore the hit. Your armor can degrade over time. Weapon range matters in positioning. Hesitation and how fast you act matters as well.
Yeah.
During our final duel, Prim had a reflexes of 5 versus the average reflex, which Gale also had, of 4, and that means Krim got an extra action every round, and it was very powerful. And
Yeah, action economy matters a lot, but once again, my favorite thing, there is no battle map.
Yeah, it was, once you guys got the hang of it, 2 minutes we got through a whole, it started going quite quickly.
yeah,
Once
you get the hang of it, it goes faster.
But yeah, as a system, it was really, really realistic, which was kind of cool and nice in that, okay, you're standing there posturing for a lot of the time, ducking out of this, the armor isn't protecting you, whatever. But it was also hyper-realistic in, okay, this person is wounded or dazed, now they're going to hesitate for a bit, now that's going to spiral into a death spiral of they're out, and they're out really quickly. And in part, I liked the realism, but as playing a game for myself personally, it wasn't so much my thing. Because I really like fights. I love going in and being able to punch things out. And because the fighting and wound rules were so penalizing,
Punishing?
like if you got hurt, you were out for a good couple of months, it kind of made me shy away from, maybe I don't want to do this fight because then my character is going to be messed.
Yeah,
Hurting
and so
people is bad.
let's go into
it's so
let's go into
fun.
injury. We'll come back to fight if there's more to say about it. But injury and recovery
Well-
is
No, go ahead, because what I have to say applies to injuries as well.
injury
Um,
and
But
recovery
wait, before injury, let's quickly do armor. That makes more sense because armor
Oh,
will
yeah,
take
armor.
2
That's
seconds.
true. Armor.
Armor is dice, armor's dynamic, armor degrades, which makes it super interesting because you can continually hit the same point of armor to weaken it or destroy it, and that's how you win a fight. Because normally armor, a piece of metal won't let a knife through it until you destroy the piece of metal, and you got to do it a bunch of times, and it does that really well. And
Yeah.
it's dynamic, which is cool.
Yep.
You're not sure if it's gonna work.
And weapon, basically, when you take damage, you roll armor in a fight. That is,
Yeah.
you roll armor. The armor has dice, basically, depending how good it is. And if any of them are successes, normally you can negate the damage. Some weapons have extra bonus against armor, which means you need more than one success. And you ignore the hit completely. If you roll a 1, even if you succeed, if any of the dice are a 1 on most armor, the armor loses a die. It will degrade over time from that hit. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will. It's random, well done, still semi-consistent, which is what it's intended to be. It's good.
Mhm.
Yep.
And once again, the death spiral. When your armor goes, you do too.
Yeah, the armor's
shortly
awful.
thereafter.
Armor is medieval like fantasy, relative historical accuracy kind of thing. Armor is it's the most important thing in a fight, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
if
your
you have
armor
the-
falls apart, you can take, even if you're a super hardy dude, like made of muscle, 2 good hits, you're down.
Yeah.
A person who is
Without
completely unskilled in fighting in good armor will likely beat a person who is very skilled in fighting without armor.
But skill did matter in fight, which was also fun.
It really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very well done.
Yeah, between fight and injury and recovery and armor, I think that alone shows the level of gritty realism you can get out of Burning Wheel. It's very, very, very well grounded in
Yes. If you
medieval
engage the
fighting
system. And if you want it to be.
how that actually worked.
Yep.
So
the way-
you've got armor that'll keep you on the battlefield, but once that armor is gone, you're done.
Yes. Once the way injury works is as you take injuries, you will start losing dice. Obstacles will be higher than normal, and you'll start getting worse. That's the death spiral. You'll get penalties from it. Wounds will start to get worse than normal. If you take 3 superficial wounds, the 4th one becomes a light wound. You have a limit of 3 of each type of wound. There's a system based on your stats for calculating how much damage you can take.
Once again, just trust it. Don't think about it.
Yes, just trust it.
Mhm.
Healing
We trust HP, and
takes
HP makes
a
no
very
sense.
long time. The worse a wound is, the longer it takes to heal. That makes sense. And that's why, Indigo, you switched characters partway through, because your character took not even relatively that serious of a wound. Like
Minor
like
injury.
50% of your HP basically is the equivalent
Yeah.
in D&D.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the D&D equivalent of getting hit for like a really strong hit that knocks out half your HP.
Yes.
Getting like bloodied.
Instead of D&D, where it
Bloodied.
takes me 8 hours to recover from a near fatal stabbing, it took my character 5 weeks, and we never got to week 5.
We got through 1 week and then basically brought you in anyways because we were about to end the campaign and your other
You were
character
all
died.
that
The
was
other
left.
character died.
Yes.
One important point to note: there is no such thing as magical healing in any of these books for Burning Wheel.
Which is
Maybe,
beautiful.
at least for the
Yes.
Manish stock. I haven't read through all of Elves. They
Elves
might have
might, if
something.
they do.
No, elves have songs that they're spells that act like medicine rolls.
Okay.
They
So they
don't
have
heal.
Okay.
magical healing is the same as medicine.
Yeah, their magical healing is it's magically powered suturing, not magical body healing.
Mhm.
And then there was range and cover, which we did not use. So I don't think. Do we have anything to say about that right now?
Nope.
Besides from
Excited to try it.
very powerful.
It's used for assaulting position, anything from assaulting to a position that's fortified to you can use it for a chase as well.
Yeah.
technically.
The thing I was thinking of using range and cover for is a snowball fight in the Hobbitsville 4-year-long Burning Wheel campaign. We could use range and cover
That
for the
would totally
snowball
work.
fight that'll happen one winter. That will be fun.
Yeah.
But that's all we really need to use for fighting in that
Yes.
game.
And then so that we didn't touch range and cover. We don't have anything to say about that. It's probably like the others, complicated but good. And then there's magic.
Yes.
So much magic.
So much magic.
Burning Wheel has a separate book that came out called the Codex,
Yeah.
with several magic systems inside of it. We used 2 of
Art
them
magic
and
and
back
necromancy.
on, but we never actually used the blood magic part. It was there to be used, but it never got used.
I explicitly made a no blood magic character. Because blood magic's gross.
Yeah. So
I don't want to torture.
No, necromancy's less gross than blood magic. What?
Because blood magic requires torturing people, and I didn't really want to play a character
Oh.
It
people.
does.
Like, I didn't want to hunt and torture people. That wasn't interesting, so I said no
That's
to blood
fair.
magic.
All right.
So in the regular Burning Wheel book, there is a sorcery system. It is spell based. It is very powerful, and it is very unpredictable. And it can cut back pretty harshly on the caster as well. We did not use that. We used what's called art magic instead, which is basically a bunch of effects that the caster has that
It's
they can
magic
be
light.
Yeah, so basically you've got 3 effects that you're good at that you weave into different spells, and you have creative control over what those spells actually do.
Mhm.
You can narrate them. So one of them is aid, basically, where you the mechanical effect is giving bonus dice to something else, but you can narrate that however you want. Be it ice, grow a bunch of plants around the other person to help steady them as they're trying to pull our friend over the lip of the cliff that they fell off.
Mhm.
Things like that.
Yeah. Art magic is very simple, but you could also make it very complicated.
Yeah.
Right. It all depends on how familiar you are, I guess, with the core of Burning Wheel, because one of the art magic things is like traits. You can give someone a trait, and then the obs are all listed in there. Like, I made a big wall of fire, and that was like, you want to make a wall of fire? Okay, you got to add like, how long it's gonna be there. What else was it?
It's breadth and what's the other one? Target, right? Or something like
Oh,
that.
it was how much it affected the AC of the person going through it. Because we
No,
upped
that
the-
was like when I rolled
Yeah,
this.
it's breadth and duration are the two.
Yeah.
two
So how
things.
many people you want to affect with it? Which is, I guess, like, I don't know what it was for the wall, but duration you can make it for, a scene, for an instant, or like for the campaign. Like there are
Yeah.
different ways you can set it up.
Yeah, it is possible to cast a spell that will perpetuate itself until the story is over
Yeah.
by
I tried
increasing
to
the
do that.
obstacle of the spell.
But yeah, magic is fun. Magic is also bullshit because
You know what's more fun? The necromancy rules, because you could make your own horrific monsters.
yeah,
It was build a
Yes.
monster. All of the necromancy rules are build a monster.
Yeah.
That's what
it's
they're
Build-A-Bear
designed
Workshop, but horrifying monstrosities.
horrifying undead monsters. You can either do the quick and dirty one, which is the option of going and buying a pre-stuffed bear from Build-A-Bear, or they just give you the simple generic stuffed bear. You can do that. It's real fast. You can summon a zombie anytime you see a corpse. There's like a chart that tells you how hard it is. But what you really want to do is take your time and Build-A-Bear. Pick out the right stuffing, pick out the right coat, pick out the right accessories, and you Build-A-Bear your monster together.
yeah. So necromancy is you make monsters. Art magic is you are the monster.
Yeah,
That's what it
basically.
is.
Necromancy also does have one other feature.
And the other
where
thing
you can
is
turn
the more
yourself into
horrifying
a
Build-A-Bear
bitch.
option, where you take the employee, you hollow them out, and you fill them with stuffing to make them a monster.
Yeah.
So Five Nights at Freddy's.
That's what the third option
Yep.
is.
Five Nights at Freddy's. And then partway through the campaign, we encountered a third. I don't know if it's necessarily magic. It's an emotional trait, I believe, called
It was the
hatred.
emotional magic. It was listed under most of the different
Okay.
thing. I think that
Which is how
humans
non-
would have had a faith human emotional magic, but we
Yeah.
decided not to go there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the
So-
orc emotion magic.
Which one of our characters
elf, or
was not an
dwarf.
orc,
Yeah.
but it fit them, and it's our game, and it works. So
Yeah.
Prim,
Yeah.
You can't tell us what to do. You're not our dad.
hateful.
yeah.
this
So
is the
Wait,
only
uh,
one
cigarettes
bit of
never
hacking
came
we
back.
did.
So midway through the game, Krim got the hatred emotional magic, and it didn't affect a lot. It kind of gave another level of these are different things that I should be tracking to see if it levels up. It could have been used in a couple of different ways. I could basically substitute it in for different for a skill roll, so long as it was related to my
To murder.
hatred and
As long as
violence.
it was murder and violent, it was great. I love that
Yeah.
specificity. You get this powerful boon if you're doing violent.
The thing that I really like about emotional magic, which we didn't really get a chance to do in our game because it was a shorter campaign, but was the fact that it keeps leveling up. Even from little minor things, it's going to keep on ticking up. Once it hits 10, it's an auto death. Your character is done, which is
Yeah,
really
well-
fun because I can see that as you get higher, yeah, your hatred or whatever you can roll with is getting more and more powerful, but you better be balancing it because as that keeps going up, you're literally going to be out of the game school soon. Your hatred is going to overrule your ability to function as a character. You're going to be gone. And so there was that level of balance that at this point didn't really come in. I was low. We didn't have a
Yeah.
long game. I just wanted to ramp that up so I could
Yeah.
get angry.
My,
But yeah, it was a fun system.
I believe by the rules of the game, if you maxed out your hatred, you would have either had to run naked into battle or die in a blood orgy or something similar.
Like something like you just lose your mind to hatred.
Yeah, it's like I need to go to Valhalla right now, so I need to keep fighting
We're
right
going-
now.
It's
Express train.
yeah.
straight to
Start killing
Valhalla.
everyone
Trying
in
to
the
take out
town.
the immortal emperor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
By
And to
yourself
establish a-
with a sharp stick. That's what it does.
Mm.
To establish a baseline for emotional magic, emotional attributes, greed is the dwarven emotional attribute. Every time they like get a bunch of shiny shit,
For greed,
or
they
go
pick
after
what
a
they
bunch of
like.
shiny shit.
For greed, you
Like-
pick what you like. You say, I
Yeah.
like shiny shit, I like pretty stuff, or I like shiny shit, I like expensive stuff, or whatever. You pick the
Yeah.
things you like for your greed, and then every time you see them, you have to roll, or you must have it. There's like a rule
Yep.
where it's like, I gotta have it. And every time you see something on your list, you roll, and if you fail, your new goal is to get that thing.
Yeah.
With
O'Shea,
elves,
Persona.
it's grief. Basically, they mourn the loss of the undying lands they came from. It's the whole like Lord of the Rings elvish thing where they were all leaving and because they wanted to be back home and not in this terrible place.
But
But
cool would've been
unfortunately,
great.
yeah.
Fight.
And yeah, because of the codex, you now have a second elven trait called spite, where you grieve so hard that you become bitter and angry and take it out on the world at large.
It's the best character moment I could possibly envision. You
Yeah.
play the friendly sad elf game just to max your grief out. You play the pity party elf game for a year. You play sad, crying, emotional elves for a year.
And then you become like a death cultist or something like
And
that.
then you go, then you go death cult.
Yep.
Yes. So,
And hatred is usually the realm of orcs and their savagery and everything else.
Yes,
Yeah.
we customized it slightly in terms of like how it would work for Crim and a mercenary soldier, but it didn't have to be changed that much, I think.
Not really.
No.
The biggest thing that had to be changed was the level of savagery. Orcs were like, "Oh yeah, I saw someone kill my friend. That's ob 4," and I'm like, "That's my friend who's just died next to me. I'm pretty sure that's a little bit more than."
Yeah, we had to shift it
tweaked
a
it a
little
bit.
for humans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was
Orcs are a
still-
bit more brutal.
Yeah, just a bit.
just a little.
But yeah, that
That's
is
basically it.
every system and subsystem. Now we move on to the game overview. Zen and Indigo, what was it like GMing the game? We mentioned this a few times, but this is what was it like.
Yeah. So my approach to Burning Wheel is session 0, you get everybody together. Usually the GM will have 2 or 3 different ideas to pitch of what's called the big picture. It's a starting scenario in which there is the situation is charged for change, and the players can assume the roles of people that can affect said change. So we all sit down, we go through, we agree on that, we build the world together. And as a GM, you set up that inciting incident and then just roll that ball down the hill and watch the players chase it. And from that point on, look to their beliefs for ways to set up the next session and things to challenge the players with, because you always want to be going after the beliefs and finding ways to make your players make terrible choices. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I didn't run as much because it was just the shorter half of it, but I like the way the skills. It might just be the group, because we just came off of playing a longer game, and that just came off of playing a game that lasted a couple years, so we're pretty good about yes-anding with each other at this point.
Yep.
But I really like I can say a paragraph or 2 of setup text. I could tell you the situation, and you have all of the tools to advance the situation on your own, unlike in Dungeons & Dragons, where I can tell you the situation, and then I gotta put 4 doors in front of you, and then I have to put a sharp stick behind you, pointing you towards picking a door. Like this, because you get XP for achieving your beliefs. I tell you the situation, and the players all think, all right, this is where I'm at. How do I get points for my beliefs? What do I have to do?
Yeah.
Players want to take action without...
Yeah, in 5th edition, the player's first goal in 5th edition, I think, is not to die, followed by getting XP.
Murder everything.
Followed by, killing everything, getting XP. But not dying is still at the top.
Yeah, because they get experience for going after what they want, it means they're inspired to go after what they want. Like, I don't need to set up a narrative hook for this story, because the narrative hook is per character.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you the general situation, and then your personal hook tells you where to go.
Yep.
So I like that, because it's not so much I have to tell you why you care. That's the hardest thing to do in D&D. You got all these like ragged adventurers.
Like, oh, you have 5 different backstories. Okay, one at a time, we're going to explore everyone's backstory, which happens to be related to a dungeon or something.
Yeah, and then you have to tell them why they care, and I don't want to tell you why you care. I don't care why you care. You care why you care. That's it's a personal decision at that point.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for making you care. If you want experience, you have to go after your beliefs.
Yep.
And that being said, the other challenge as a GM is we're blessed with a good group that doesn't mind stepping on each other's toes and making things harder for each other. But if you really need to make sure your players are crafting beliefs that don't send them in complete opposite directions.
Crafting beliefs and writing beliefs, I'd say more so than anything else. Instincts is not that important, relatively speaking. Writing a belief properly is a skill. It is something that there are things like there's a very clear difference between a good and a bad belief.
Yes.
And there's so many factors in that. How does it interact with the other beliefs of yourself and the beliefs of other characters? Does it have an achievable goal? Because if you want to get experience, usually you want an achievable goal as part of that belief. That's why some beliefs are 2 sentences. I had one that was 2 very long sentences that could have been 3, which is very unusual. But usually it's I believe this broad. I believe this broad thing. Here's this specific thing I want to do about it. And the one I just gave was an example of broad thing, medium thing, specific goal.
Yeah. And then sometimes people think me big dum dum. I will show I'm not big dum dum.
Yes.
Yeah, they're
Sometimes
usually
that
first person. They're what your character believes, so it's fine to write them in first person
Yes.
as the
And
character.
for them to be fallible as well. Like
Yeah, they don't have to be true. It's not truths of the world. You're not writing facts. You're writing what your character believes, and that
and what
can
they
be
want to do
wrong.
about it. Yeah.
It could be I think the earth is flat. I will make a rocket to see if it is true. And then,
Yes.
That's a belief.
And I will say that this game appeals to me because I separate player and character sometimes when I'm looking at what I want to do, because the player wants to see that character do some messed up stuff and come out the other side. That character doesn't want anything to have to do with
Nope.
it.
Yes.
So
That's one
when
thing
you're
I think
writing your
Burning Wheel
beliefs-
taught me back when I played it the first time is how to be a good director for your character and how to play a character and enjoy playing them and also enjoy making them suffer as their own player.
Yeah, you torture your own character.
Engage your
not the
sadism.
character.
Like, like definitely make beliefs that will point the character into a tricky and dangerous situation and make them make a hard choice. Because you're going to get all kinds of rewards for that.
You're
You're
gonna
going to
get
get
Artha,
Artha
and
for
it's
your beliefs,
interesting.
instincts, and traits. You're going to get extra Artha for embodiment or mold breaker and stuff like that. You can pile on the rewards for just driving your character into the dirt.
And that's just what made it feel like our game went off the cliff, because
we all, I think, played the game very well,
it.
and not too well. That's not a thing. But after each session, I had to step back and be like, "Oh, that was
I'm not
intense."
a bad person.
For me, it was like that was intense.
I do like him. He's a good guy.
But
fuck that Syrian.
Yeah. So I think that brings us to the next point, which is kind of the 3 in the middle question of playing in a more competitive versus a cooperative game.
We basically had 2 extreme ends, I think, in our 2 games.
We did.
Yeah, I meant the 3 people that played in both. Which one was better, worse? Which worked?
From a purely preferential standpoint, the competitive game, the players scheming at each other, was so good.
It was.
It was
so much fun that my loyalty kept shifting, that I had to figure out, okay, do I trust this character? Do I trust this character? What do I do about this character? And because I knew I was interacting with another player character, it mattered to both of us. And I loved that.
We were all, in a way, doing part of the GM role for each other. Like what Zen said, he basically stepped back and let us take the wheel and start crashing
you didn't have to write interesting NPCs for us to interact with. Because
we were each other's own interesting NPCs.
Yeah, we all were
the downside of.
Just a quick sentence. We were all protagonists. We were not all protagonists of the same story. We were all our own protagonists in our own story that smashed against other people's story like a high-speed train.
Yes.
That's.
It was wonderful.
But of course, the downside of that, which we've touched on before, and what was really good about a cooperative story is, in the competitive sense, no help from each other.
No.
Yes,
Almost
that's
never.
correct.
Very
Whereas
rare.
in the cooperative story, it's like, oh, we need to find food. All right, how many help dice can we gather into this
Yeah.
pool? And it was a very different feel. You could still have, I'm working with this character, or I don't like this character as much, but you were working towards that same goal.
And a normal game is
Yeah.
middle of the road, where you have some some character-to-character conflicts that were both are player characters, and you have some cooperation. And sort of in a longer game, because neither of our games were longer, you'd bounce back and forth between them. Your relationships with each character would evolve and change as the characters themselves do as too.
Yeah.
I would say that
and I was just gonna say that is the mechanic supporting a dynamic relation,
Mhm.
right? Like this game will allow you to hate for the dwarf and elf hate each other and bear that out in the mechanics, but still be able to adventure together.
Yes.
it was a little bit more difficult to kind of find that dramatic flair while we were working in concert together for the same goals, but
I think the
Yeah.
one thing I just came up with this or realized it that I really like about Burning Wheel, as opposed to most role-playing games, is it doesn't have the adventuring party as a thing at all. If that makes
Nope,
sense.
it's great.
It's
adventure
there's
parties are
You
dumb.
totally can. Like there's
You
nothing stopping
can.
you, but you can also play random shopkeepers in a city.
I don't
you know.
even mean specific to adventuring, but I mean like the almost like I have to play my character like this way and like they'll agree with this other character because they're in the same party, so they can't try to kill each other or things like that.
Yeah, there's no concept of party. If you get sick of the little dwarf next to you that you've been walking for 3 months with, you can snap one day, stab them in their sleep, and then run off, and the game will keep going as scheduled.
Yeah, there's no
Because
like,
now tangent
oh
to-
well, I guess the thief is stealing again, and I'm a paladin, but we're both player characters.
Yeah,
So what am I gonna do? No,
we
you will
switch to
cut
the
off
rest
his
of the
hand as the
session.
paladin.
The paladin is chasing the thief for killing the cleric. That's the rest of the session.
And I think that's the most important lesson of Burning Wheel. Actions have consequences.
yes.
You don't do a damn thing in this game without 4 other things falling out underneath it because of what you did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think that's the game, and honestly, I think that is a very good last point on the overall game.
Yeah.
We got to rate. No, we got to do a rating.
We're not
We
done
have to-
completely. Oh, we're not.
we're
Well, the
not.
rule book itself is
Okay.
important, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought about what reading the rule book was like, and the closest book
This is like the only rule book I've read covered.
I've read it. Yeah. The rule book itself, the game is excellent. The game is dense, and the rule book isn't perfect at portraying the game. It is really good in some ways. The things you have to learn at the beginning is at the beginning, but there are parts of it that are laid out very strangely. The skill and trait lists are next to each other and always get mixed up.
Yeah.
The glossary, or the index rather, is difficult to parse because it's right next to another. Those.
It
Yeah,
highlights
Half of
headings
playing
and
the game,
important
the
things.
rule book is required material. Half of playing the game,
It's
4
flipping through the
different
book.
people
Is
frantically
Yeah.
flipping.
yes.
I mean, I don't know if you can really see
Oh yeah,
Green
there's some.
screen.
because my
There's
green screen, but
Oh,
I
there's
had to
bookmarks
tab
all
on a
over.
bunch of stuff.
Green bookmarks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um,
mine's not tabbed.
that-
I
that
spent
one's
the
better,
whole time just
you know.
like nightmare flipping between these 2 books.
Marissa has kept our copy of Burning Wheel on the coffee table where she is for the since we started, for months. It's been there.
Great.
Burning Wheel, I would say, is also though a bit dry. It's very well done. The closest thing I can think of as a novel is actually Dune, in terms of very good, but also a bit dense and dry.
Have you never read Lord of the Rings?
That's true. I have read Lord of the Rings.
Very good,
I have,
also dense and dry.
yes.
Yeah.
You're
It
right,
is the
actually.
densest and the driest. It's like cardboard.
Oh, the Silmarillion's the densest and the driest. If you
I was
wanna get-
Yeah.
including that. I was including the
The Lord of the
Silmarillion.
Rings and the Silmarillion books are probably what Burning Wheel is like. It takes effort, intentionality, and getting through part of itself to get to.
Yeah.
On the
What I-
positive,
Totally
just
worth
tone
it,
side of the book, I did like the author's tone, like the author's notes and the flavor. It was a very personal tone, which was kind of
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
especially considering it was very dense and dry.
When I say I read it cover to cover, I mean I've read everything inside the cover, but not in a straight line.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
say don't let the rule book scare you, because even then I only read the parts that I needed.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what is very helpful about it. Is you only need to
Yeah.
read certain parts of it to play.
And I would probably say, I like this quote because A, I like the dude, and B, I think it's a good quote for any RPG game from Travis Willingham is, if you gave someone the rule book to football, they would never play football.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the rule book might make it seem
Yeah.
scarier than it is.
Yes.
And yeah, and I will say that just the rule for playing the game is that. The rest of it here, even though my green screen screwed the look of it,
the other 3/4 of it.
the rest of it is all life paths and subsystems and traits. You really only need, I think 80 pages.
I think about
I'm
80
looking
pages.
right now. It's-
Most of those
get-
pages are free online.
Yeah.
So you if you
Yeah, all
read
of
that
those pages are
online,
free.
the like official one, you
Yeah, it's
know
exactly
most
80
of the
pages
game.
for all of
Oh,
the
it is?
actual rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know most of the game.
Character burning's a subsystem.
Yeah. And I think that's that. Let's put together our conclusion and conclusive thoughts.
Yeah.
So, according to the book, I don't have the book with me, as I just mentioned. What does the game set out to do? Like, what does it say it's supposed to do?
Specifically,
Yeah. What does the book actually say it's about?
The Burning Wheel books
So-
are instruction manuals of how to play.
yeah,
It does not say. It specifically doesn't say why.
Well, it says fight for what you believe, or since it's a role-playing game, fight for what your character believes. That's what Burning Wheel is in a nutshell. You are testing your character and putting them through their paces to achieve their to prove themselves right or wrong with their beliefs and achieve their goal.
Yeah.
Is the game good at what it sets out to do? I mean,
I would say
we've
yes.
basically, this whole thing is extremely better at that specific thing, better than anyone, and it doesn't even come close, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would we play it again? We have literally been talking about that over the course of this.
Yeah, I can't. I will
Yes.
always say yes. Yes,
Yes.
if I answer.
Literally my favorite game. Literally my favorite game.
Yeah, I mean,
Like I would play it again, because I think the more you play it, the more the better you understand it, right? So if we played it
And-
again, I'd
yeah, and
build
also-
the character differently.
Yeah,
And
every
not
time
even
you
just-
play it, you're gonna want to play a different character. Like I keep thinking,
Yeah.
like I want to play a different character. I want to play with a different subsystem. I want to be a wealthy merchant and care about
Yeah.
money and stuff, and want
Yeah.
to just keep moving
And
forward.
even beyond that, for different people, like I'm not a truly I want to build a bunch of characters, but I want to keep going deeper and deeper into the characters, and this
Yeah.
allows that almost indefinitely. I could keep messing with Krim.
Yep.
We could make a bunch of geezers and do
We could
one
do
last
old
job.
man fights.
You do what?
do a bunch of old man fights.
Yeah.
6 life path
Battle
minimum.
of the Bands as well could be a thing.
6
Yeah.
life path minimum battle brawl.
That'd be great.
We all made a pact.
This
if-
is like the
if we're
end
70 and we're not
climactic
dead,
fight of
we
Up.
all have to kill
We're
each
all-
other.
It's like a group fight, but it's the climax of Up. That's what it is.
I just had a great another PvP type Burning Wheel situation. Do you guys know what a tontine is? Like the
Yeah,
last person to
ooh,
die
no.
gets the gold.
Yeah, we do
bunch
a
of people make a
tontine,
pact.
we
They
started
were
different-
popular where they found some treasure or something and or they put a bunch of money into the pot, and the last person alive from that group gets the prize.
Yeah. We play old adventurers in different towns. We all start in a different town, and we all need money for some reason. Like something big has come up, and we have to cash in the tontine, but it's the last one
Oh.
alive.
Burning
It's
Wheel.
like
How would
Hunger
Burning
Games.
Wheel work as a murder mystery? I think it actually could work. I don't know if well, differently than others, because Wises can then state truths if you go in as a murder mystery, you'd have to go in without the GM knowing for sure.
Well, the problem with murder mystery is that's a super time-sensitive campaign setting. Unless you do procedural, you could do procedural drama Burning Wheel. You could do medieval. You could do medieval
CSI,
cops.
Burning Wheel CSI.
Yeah, you could do CSI. You could do Law and Order. You couldn't do one murder mystery though.
That's true. You're right.
You could do Chasing Jack the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
something
think you could
that would
probably
take place
do,
a little while.
Clue, Burning Wheel, right? Because even
that'd be a one shot. You could one shot it, but it wouldn't be like a good campaign.
Yeah,
not as a campaign, no. But yeah, who would we recommend the game to?
Anyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Anyone who wants a character-focused game, because if they're in the game to go and hit things and rule of cool, Burning Wheel's not going to work for them.
The term beer and pretzels.
I disagree. Brutal historical fighting is everything.
It depends. Some people just play D&D to hang out with their friends and happen to play D&D on the side. I would only recommend it to them if there was if it was one of the one-shots with pre-made characters, because then they basically don't have to worry about reading the rules until they already know how it works.
Yeah. You do not want to recommend it to any group that isn't willing to do the work to learn the rules and commit at least 12 sessions before you say, nah, this isn't for us.
Yes.
You know, you want to give it that time to.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if
I would also.
I ran a one-shot of Burning Wheel using I think I talked about this with Zen. It was the Snowed In one. I don't remember specifically the name of it.
Words Remain Below.
Words Remain Below. Okay.
Yeah, it's called.
I ran that one shot. It was supposed to be for 4 people. One person had to go early. One person never showed. It was just 2 people, and they both said, even though I was basically making stuff up after the first hour of the 4-hour one-shot, because it turns out 2 people in a player versus player thing can get through it really quickly, they still said it was one of the best games they had played. And from how they talked, they were both used to regular D&D. And I think that's because it offers a lot more substance than D&D can when it comes to characters.
Yeah, I also, as like, I'm studying history, so like the little historian in me is like, oh, I like the descriptions of like the armor and the arms and like stuff like that. Like it makes more historical sense, right? In that sense, like you know, if you could totally run it without any dwarves, without any elves, without any magic, without any of that, and you could do like medieval to early modern, just like role playing.
And honestly, it would still work. Burning Wheel is not this. Burning Wheel is tied to a setting in how the rules work, but the heart of Burning Wheel is not tied to its setting. It is tied to characters.
Yeah,
and the fact
very much tied to characters, and that I think is the big difference from D&D. Because in D&D, I can create this awesome interior designer orc who really enjoys doing ballet, and that's never ever going to come up ever, because all that's going to matter is how well he can hit things with his axe. In Burning Wheel, you can bet anything that's going to come up.
In D&D, that orc, your skills are performance and perception. That's it. But in Burning Wheel, you'd have like ballet wise, interior design wise, I don't know.
And what's going to come up is how were you treated in work society?
You'd have like a mean old lady who smokes and yells at me wise. Like that.
Yeah, you can build your entire character, and it's just as complex and mechanically relevant as a character
like
who hits things.
Although orcs in a ballet theater, Orcish Ballet Company would be a great game.
Oh, absolutely.
Burning Wheel?
Yeah, Burning Wheel.
You use hatred?
Hatred for ballet. Yeah.
Hatred unchanged, though. You still have to brutally murder someone.
No, it's like this horrible macabre ballet.
Yes, you go, pliette, and then you kick someone in the face, knocking their head off.
No, it's pliette, but you got axes tied to your hands. Like
it's things like that. It's like Yeah, it's like playing an orc in Lord of the Rings, except it's like if you put a musical filter over it. So like whenever the orcs are fighting, it's supposed to be this big war, but they're all moving in rhythm and like skipping and things like that.
That would be a beautiful game. Let's not throw this idea out the window.
None of the ideas here.
I want to see the trials and tribulations of Orc Ballet Academy.
Are there any others you will or will not recommend the game to?
Anyone that tells me you can do anything with D&D 5th edition, I want to. I'm not going to talk to them anyway.
Just throw the book at them and then leave.
Yeah, like I probably wouldn't recommend it to like D&D players who are like
Purists, D&D purists.
Yeah, like
or
combat
people-
heavy focused people.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
if
a
you're
friend
looking
of
for
ours-
Combat heavy. Not gonna find
Yeah,
it.
there's
here.
a friend of Jordan and I's in our 5th edition game who their favorite game is Pathfinder because of the parts of Pathfinder that it excels at. That is their preferred style of game.
The hyper crunchy combat.
Hyper crunchy
Yeah,
combat,
that's right.
specialization, the character customization, and oftentimes using the rules to either win at or entirely negate a combat scenario. And that's fine. That's what they're good at. That's what they like. It doesn't fit in Burning Wheel, and they themselves have tried other games and have not liked them. So it's fine. They like what they like.
Yeah.
So if it's someone who isn't open to new things and like you know that they aren't going to be, I wouldn't say willing to try it, like it basically. If they
give it a chance. If
Also-
if they're not going to be open to giving it a chance, it's not going to work at all.
In a very specific sense, people who can't take that intensity or don't want to connect with their characters that much, that also might not be the game for them.
Oh no, this is
Too emotionally connected.
I don't know. I disagree. I feel like the ability to write the beliefs and that striation between player and character of being able to say what your character's beliefs are. And I don't know if I do this a lot, so you probably have noticed, but I will say what the gist of what my character says. So this character says this in this tone. That knowing what the beliefs are means I have guideposts to do the directorial stuff. And I feel like it's way easier to be a director for your character in Burning Wheel. Because that's my preferred way to play a character, is be a director. I can't embody well. It's hard. And I don't like having to encounter hard brain things when I'm doing a game.
Yeah. I think Burning Wheel is good for both of those people, the director and the actor.
I care about stories and I care about characters. I just care less about my character. I just care about the story and the characters. So being able to direct one of the actors is super fun for me. So that's kind of why I like the belief system, is I can direct my character as opposed to D&D. I have to pilot.
It's also a bit ironic. We're talking about Burning Wheel because people say you can do anything in D&D, and if you hack it, that's true. That's how game design works. But we're literally accidentally coming up with several different ideas for Burning Wheel
that aren't hacks. But those aren't hacks of Burning Wheel. Those are just playing with different parts of the Burning Wheel rules. To do murder mystery in D&D properly, you have to write a new game based on D&D, and that's not going to fit well. It's duct taping on the murder mystery mechanic.
It's get your investigation, perception skill, and insight skills. Rest don't matter. Maybe at the end when there's one fight, because that's how murder mysteries go. Yeah. Rating. How would we rate the game? Is entirely arbitrary. So you can rate it.
I have mine, if we're ready for mine.
I have 2 ratings for the game. The first one is a ESRB rating. Like this game, NC-17, if the group there's a lot of realism. So that is a concern for any GM running it, that there are parts of this game that can go above and beyond what people are comfortable with.
In terms of violence?
In terms of violence, in terms of certain traits.
There
was
one trait we talked about not taking.
Yeah, we specifically had a conversation where we said we're not playing with this part of the game because of the kind of game we want.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, because it is historically relevant, there are certain traits in the game that could affect characters with otherness.
Yes.
And we were not interested in that.
Yes.
Session 0
I
is
think that there were actually different life paths for female and male characters as well, which we just kind of...
Yes.
Yeah, which you can optionally ignore. Like, the game makes no presumption about gender. You can be a non-binary character and take the lady life path.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
It's,
And
there's
there are
definitely a
things like
conversation.
wives that can also be construed as just spouse, because as a spouse, that's basically it means you're the homemaker and the other person is the professional, and you pick up some of their skills because in medieval life you had to help out your spouse in their business.
Yep.
But that gender swapping on that is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd
But
say
it
because of all
requires a
those,
conversation.
it's extremely easy to tone it down, honestly, even to just PG.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can play Burning Wheel with kids, and other than like a couple math skills, don't be that hard for them.
Well,
But
even
it
the math
requires
skills
the
are, like,
conversation and conscious effort to tone it down. Because as it stands in the book, it's raw. It's very raw in that sense. It
Yes.
doesn't pull punches
Reading the
on
book
that
would
kind
be
of
higher than that. I was just talking about
medieval
playing
bigotry.
the game.
It doesn't pull punches on medieval bigotry, so you
Yes.
got to think about it and put thought into what you can and cannot pick, and you make conscious decisions, and that fixes it.
Yes.
Just had to get that little thing
Yeah.
out there since
It's
we're talking about
important.
rating anyway. But as far as like my personal rating of Burning Wheel, a towering inferno is my recommendation. That is my rating. A towering
Similarly,
inferno.
I give Burning Wheel 5 out of 8 spokes. It has 5 out of 8 spokes.
I was gonna make that same joke because I looked to see how many spokes are on the wheel.
Well, I am a bit more conventional with my rating systems here. I am going to give it a 9 out of 10 there.
9 out of
Simply
10
lost
what?
one on me for
9 out of
personal
10
preference
what?
because I like fighting things. 9 out of 10
Um,
just points.
9 out of 10
Come
points?
on now.
Okay.
What are
Arbitrary
those
nightmare
points?
points.
Yeah.
I have no
You're
point of reference
abstract.
for what a point is. What is the sort of abstract thought you're applying? 9 out of 10 what?
I
9
will
out of
give
10.
it 3 out of 3 dead wizard. No, sorry, 4 out of 4 dead wizards. Because that's probably
Okay.
what happened at the end of the game.
And I will rate it the High Roller, the largest Ferris wheel in the world in Las Vegas. That is what I'm rating it. A High Roller out of Ferris wheels.
Yeah.
High roller.
Good luck
Yeah, it is in
interpreting
Las
that
Vegas.
correctly.
The Las Vegas Ferris wheel at 550 feet. It is the largest Ferris wheel in the world as of this random article.
Cool. So yeah, those are our official reviews. No further questions.
Yes.
Mhm.
But also play it. Pretty much everyone.
Play-
If you're watching
play it.
this
Oh, yeah.
video,
Go-
then you should play it.
100%.
If you found the
Play
time
it.
to dig through the nightmare of YouTube garbage to find this video, you have made it to the end. Just play the game.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Play it.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank
So
you for
next week-
watching. Next week we'll be doing Session 0 Blades in the Dark. I will be GMing.
We don't stop. We don't stop for anything.
No.
Nope.
It's quarantine time. We're gonna get as many role-playing games out of the way as possible.
I have another one-shot lined up if someone's missing.
Wait, what is it?
Nice.
That's my dumb playing game.
Oh, yes. Okay. We will see you next week. Same time, same place.
Yeah.
Same URL.
Different game.
Yes.
Different game.
Different game.
Different overlay.
Different overlay, which I need to design still.
Yeah. Tune in for new artwork.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.